kids out of the pool for Adult Swim.
Every generation gets their boy band. Mine was One Direction.
That's what makes you beautiful.
They were different. They were special. They weren't like other boy bands. They didn't dance. They didn't do the heavily harmonized a cappella singing. They didn't wear the glam boy band outfits. And they were here and gone so quickly. They formed in 2010, first album in 2011, break in America in 2012, and by late 2015, they were doing their last performance together. And I think that's the reason that in the grand scheme of pop culture history, One Direction's not really remembered. Part of the reason I wanted to do this video was because I've seen with my own eyes young people online saying, "Did you know Harry Styles used to be in a boy band?" Which blows my mind. I mean, there's probably plenty of people my age who unfortunately would say the same about Justin Timberlake, or would be like, "Oh, did you know the host of Love is Blind used to be in a boy band?" And to that I'd say, you don't even know the half. But that's what I'm here for, to make sure we all collectively never forget anything, and we know everything. So take my hand and walk with me through the history of One Direction. First, we must go back in time and talk about their maker, Simon Cowell. Simon's the son of an EMI executive, Eric Cowell. In case you aren't familiar with EMI, music's big three, Sony, UMG, and Warner, used to be music's big four, Sony, UMG, Warner, and EMI, who were later absorbed by UMG. Simon bounced around trying to find his niche. For a while, he specialized in novelty records. He worked with puppet artists Zig and Zag. He convinced the stars of the show Soldier Soldier to record their version of Unchained Melody that they sang on the show, which sold millions of records. He got in early for a publishing deal with the Teletubbies. He was always trying to find what was hot at the time and hustle some money out of it. And anyone with eyes could see that the next big thing was boy bands. Boy bands are a tried and true formula that has shown decades of proven success. Start with the Jackson 5 and the Osmonds in the 60s and 70s. These were family bands, good old wholesome fun for the whole family. But what we start to notice as these families grow older is all the girls have a crush on Donny Osmond. He's the real hot seller. What people really wanted were teen idols. So we got groups like Menudo, Bay City Rollers, and New Edition in the 70s and 80s. They had the teen appeal for all the young ladies, as well as the singing and dancing chops. And New Edition really were the hot ticket. They were the ones to beat. The boy band blueprint. And after cutting ties with the group, New Edition's manager Maurice Starr wanted to make the white New Edition. So he made New Kids on the Block. And they blew up. New Kids were one of the best-selling boy bands in the world at the time, and still sit high in the top 10 even today. They also served as the new blueprint for all the groups that came in the 90s. A group called Take That was created to be the English New Kids. Then Boyzone was created by Louis Walsh to be the Irish Take That. And once they disbanded, he created Westlife to be the Irish Take That / New Kids. And meanwhile, our friend Simon was missing what was right in front of him. He was offered Take That, the English New Kids, but turned them down, which proved to be a huge mistake on his part. He grew to regret this so greatly that he held his own auditions for a boy band. Teaming up with Bob and Chris Herbert of the Spice Girls, he held auditions for an edgy boy band and created Five. They signed to BMG for a 5-album deal and almost sang Baby One More Time. But Five wasn't the boy band du jour of the 90s. You know that. Because there was a man who didn't miss the boy band boat, and his name was Lou Pearlman. Lou's family worked in jet chartering. The clientele were usually rich older people, until he had a plane full of young men who he found out were the boy band New Kids on the Block, who he was told brought in hundreds of millions of dollars between record sales, touring, and merchandise, and he realized that he was in the wrong business. He moved to the heart of the action in Orlando, Florida. Orlando had become this hotbed of youth talent as young hopefuls flocked there hoping to dance and sing for the mouse. Once there, he made a casting call for a group with a New Kids look, but a boys to men sound. And that is how he created the Backstreet Boys. From there, he was able to leverage their major success into creating more boy bands like 98 Degrees, LFO, NSYNC. And I don't think you need me to tell you that the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC were outshining anything Simon Cowell was creating across the pond. And I can't neglect to mention that with the boy band craze, there was also a girl band craze that went right alongside it. SWV, the Spice Girls, All Saints, Bewitched, they were all having their moment in the sun. And the Spice Girls in particular inspired a New Zealand TV executive, Jonathan Dowling, to create a docuseries called Pop Stars about the creation and development of the girl group True Bliss. Later, there was an Australian version that documented the rise of the girl group Bardot. The US had our own version, Making the Band, which started in 2001 with the group O-Town. Pop Stars then moved to the UK, where the group Hearsay were covered. And I should mention that here, in this version of Pop Stars, the judge Nigel Lithgow was introduced. And Nigel's shtick was being very critical and abrasive. He was very harsh truth, don't care about your feelings, matter of fact in his judging, and that became very popular among audiences both positively and negatively. And because this show was so popular, the guy who actually managed the Spice Girls, Simon Fuller, created his own show called Pop Idol, where it was not group focused and it was a contest voted by the public to find the next hit artist. On the judging panel for this show would be our friend Simon Cowell. And strangely enough, he'd be doing that very same shtick coined by Pop Idol producer Nigel Lithgow, and he became very famous for it.
Right.
Yeah. Your age isn't your problem.
No.
The problem is you can't sing.
Oh, thanks very much.
And the Pop Stars franchise were inspired too. They created their own version of the Idol format called Pop Stars Rivals, which is where we'd get Girls Aloud. And Pop Idol was such a success ratings-wise that Simon Fuller decided to take his talents across the pond, creating the one and only American Idol. And this became by far the most successful iteration of the show. Not only were the ratings higher, but the season 1 winner, Kelly Clarkson, was and still is the most popular of any of the winners of any of these shows up until this point. So, Simon saw the writings on the wall. This TV talent show thing was going far, and in some places the TV talent show was associated with his likeness. So while he was still a part of his iconic judging trio with Paula and Randy back in the States, he was cooking up something really special in the UK. His very own talent show. But the catch was, sort of like how Pop Idol was Pop Stars but without groups, Simon wanted the best of both worlds. Pop Idol, but with soloists and groups. This show was The X Factor. Now they were off to a rocky start with the winners of Season 1 and Season 2 not breaking internationally. But that's no problem because this is when Simon brings in some friends, Richard Griffiths and Harry McGee. They'd just recently been fired from BMG, tried to start an English wing of the US management agency The Firm, which went under, and since Richard was one of the main people who pushed Simon to pursue television, Simon decided to scratch his back too. Both of their backs. He brought them on as the go-to managers for all the winners of the X Factor under the name Modest Management. This was an instant success. They were able to make an international star out of Series 3 winner Leona Lewis with her hit Bleeding Love, proving that the X Factor could truly produce a pop star who could break internationally. So that's the formula. To compare, American Idol winners get a recording deal with RCA and a management deal with Simon Fuller's 19 Entertainment. Winners of the X Factor sign a recording deal with Simon Cowell's Sony subsidiary label Psycho and a management deal with Modest Management. And though the X Factor allowed groups, they weren't really dominating the show. The first really huge group they'd had was JLS in Series 5. They made it to second place. This was only the second time ever that a group had made it this far after G4 in Series 1. The heyday of the boy band and girl band had come and gone, but Simon left the door open. And that's how we would eventually get here, to the year 2010. The X Factor is on its 7th season, and we are introduced to 5 hopeful young men. Niall, Liam, Harry, Zayn, and Louis. So let's talk about their auditions. The first person we see in episode 2 in Dublin, Ireland is 16-year-old Niall Horan. He has a whole segment in this episode. We see him out in line, they do the whole little interview, points off for no devastating backstory. He's got a lot of confidence, sometimes reads his cockiness, I think it's an Irish thing. He says he wants to be the Irish Justin Bieber, but the vocals are just not there. He sings So Sick by Neo, which is just not right for his tone. But the judges like him despite the weaknesses. They like his attitude, they like his look. They can hear the girls in the audience going crazy. He's got 2 yeses, 1 no, and our tie-breaking vote is made by guest judge Katy Perry, and he's sent through. In episode 3, Birmingham, we're treated to a little bit of a backstory from Series 5 when 14-year-old Liam Payne auditioned. He wowed judges with his voice and made it all the way to judges' houses where Simon ultimately decided he was just too young to be on the show. Now 16, Liam's back for a second shot. This is another full segment. He sings Cry Me a River by Michael Bublé and smashes it out of the park, getting 4 yeses, including today's guest judge, Natalie Imbruglia. In the next couple of episodes, we see auditions from Harry and Zayn. Harry's the last person to get a full segment. He's got his whole family there. He says he's the lead singer of his band. This is another Niall type situation. He's got the confidence of an army. And then when he gets in there, he charms the pants off all the judges. He's telling them about his job he has in a bakery. And then he sings Isn't She Lovely by Stevie Wonder. And it's good, but the judges can see clear potential that he can be greater. He's voted no by Louis, yes by Simon, and yes by guest judge Nicole Scherzinger. Zayn has a very short 41-second segment. Pretty much all we see is him singing Let Me Love You by Mario. We know nothing. He gets 3 yeses. Louis wasn't shown at all during the audition episodes. He was shown later during boot camp episodes. They said that he impressed the judges before showing us a clip of him singing Hey There Delilah, and it's something, truly. He's clearly very nervous, but it's a very short clip. 34 seconds to be exact. But in 2022, with all of One Direction's fame and history, the X Factor decided to release the full taped auditions of all 5 of One Direction's members. So we'll talk about those right now. Niall's audition more than doubled in length, going from 3 minutes to over 6.5. We see that he originally wanted to sing You Got It Bad by Usher, a cappella, and the judges are unsure about how he could pull this off, and it turns out they may have been right. As soon as he finishes, they're like,
what else, Niall?
I don't know, maybe something else? And Katie asked for a song with a track, which is when we get the So Sick performance we know, which is much better than the rendition of You Got It Bad. Liam's is, I think, the exact same clip. It's literally shorter than the original upload by 6 seconds, so nothing to talk about there. Harry gets an extra couple minutes. Some of it's more bakery talk, charming Simon, which I don't think we can overstate how much his banter made him in these auditions. Not only did it make him so much more memorable, but it made them want him to be on the show. They didn't really care at that point how he sounded. The girls are going crazy. They had Simon kicking his feet and blushing. They needed this young man. Which is why when he sings his first song from the edit in the episode, this was a rough ride for everyone involved. Tone that almost sounds like he's singing it with a question mark in a way. But like I said, the judges didn't want to lose him, and it was clear that this was maybe more of a preparation issue and not a talent issue. So Simon asked to hear it a cappella. We see Isn't She Lovely? Far better song choice. Like night and day. And we finally get to see parts other than the audition for Zayn's audition. It's just more of this one song. We see some critiques from Nicole and Louis, which are just that he's clearly talented but needs some more stage presence. And for Louis, we get a whole new story of his audition from this clip that's released. Like I said, the original segment, if you could even call it that, 34 seconds. The 2022 cut, 5 minutes long. He comes in so nervous, he's bouncing off the walls, he's practically shaking, like visibly nervous. He sings the song Elvis Ain't Dead by Scouting for Girls. No one in the crowd knows it. The judges aren't vibing with it. But the performance is better than what originally aired. Like, this song makes more sense in his voice. They ask him to sing another song. He sings Hey There Delilah, and they all really like him. It's almost like you couldn't tell someone no in this state. Like, he clearly wants it so bad, and he cannot contain the excitement and the nervousness, and the emotions are overwhelming his performance, so he's sent through. And what Simon says here is so interesting. He tells Louis that he likes his style and his unique song choice. Simon knew that Louis would be an interesting person in this competition because he chose a song that nobody knew, because he was dressed kind of weird, and because he had a unique little indie look. It wasn't even about the singing, but rather everything else. Now, we all know that they clearly ended up in a group, but they didn't show up as one. So clearly, they were placed in a lifeboat group. They weren't officially called lifeboat groups. This is just a name that I've given to them to make it clear that this was a last-ditch effort to save talented, but not solo star potential artists on the show. At this point, contestants have made it through 2 rounds of cuts, not including the secret producer auditions everyone does before getting to audition for the judges. After the second and final round of cuts on the 3rd day of boot camp, the judges go through and stick together some groups made up of the chopped acts. It wasn't always this way. The first time they ever did this was in Series 4 at the request of judge and founder of Irish New Kids Boyzone, Louis Walsh. And Simon hated this idea. He thought if they put together all the chopped acts, all they'd end up with would be garbage soup.
Putting it on record now, it will not work.
But the groups he created, Future Proof and Hope, ended up pleasantly surprising Simon. At first, one of the problems you bump into by creating a band out of thin air is that they might not like each other. These people all came in here wanting to be a solo star, and now they're forced to share the spotlight. Both of these groups fell apart during the show. The next season, the group Priority didn't even make it past their first performance together, and then the season after that, the group Miss Frank were kicked off week 3. So this was something that was still just an idea. Luckily, they made it to the second round of cuts on the 3rd day where they were eliminated and then saved and placed together by none other than guest judge Nicole Scherzinger, who just so happened to be there because Cheryl got malaria. This was also released in 2022 as unseen footage where they sort through the boys' photos and one by one Nicole handpicks each of them.
But they're like little stars, so you can't get rid of little stars, you know? So you put them all together.
Before this, Simon always said that he made One Direction and everyone kind of just believed him. Louis would sometimes argue, kind of as a joke, that he was the one who had the idea to make them, but it turns out it was actually neither of them. But their options were either go home after being seen crying on television, some for the second time, or try this out and don't go home. They were in no position to say no, which is kind of an interesting psychological effect of this. Obviously, instead of cutting them at all, they could have pulled aside these groups and said, we'd like to see you as a group. But by cutting them, ripping their dreams right out of their hands after 3 intense days of performing and training at boot camp, you put them in a uniquely vulnerable position. It's like an undo button, which makes for great television. So they're through and on to judges' houses. Simon selected as the mentor for the groups category, and they're all brought out to his villa in Marbella with the singer Sanita. First, they sing Torn by Natalie Imbruglia. Then in more unaired footage, we've seen that they also performed My Life Would Suck Without You by Kelly Clarkson. They make it through, they're elated, but now it's time for the real work. They're headed into the live shows in a few weeks, but they all live across the country from each other. They meet up for weeks at a time before the live shows. Niall has to come in from Ireland. They're spending IRL money on this to make it work so that it can all pay off for the live shows. They and the other acts move into the X Factor house, and it's time for their makeover and glamour shoot. The first few weeks are a valiant effort. Liam mostly sings lead. It seems they have some trouble slotting Zayn's voice in there. He clearly wants to sing in a more R&B style. He's bringing out plenty of melismas, but they really don't fit with the songs they're singing. The judges really like them though. They said they look like a real band, and Louis says that they could possibly be the next big boy band, but they need a stylist. But Simon says that he didn't want to style them. He wanted them to do it their way. That was their thing. Remember that. Week 5 is where everything changes. The theme is American anthems, and they sing Kids in America. They finally sound like a real group and not like 5 soloists singing together. The next week, Harry takes a bit more of the lead, and the crowd loves it.
I need to tell you.
You can tell that he was getting a lot more fan attention at this point, because the next week, he takes even more lead, and the crowd goes nuts. The audience gets louder and louder each week to the point where you can't even hear what the judges are saying during critiques.
I just have to say tonight.
They get to do a celebrity guest performance, and they have Robbie Williams of Take That. Very full circle for this video. They're also doing video diaries every week. Every contestant does, but theirs are far more eventful. It's made so by Louis doing a different little bit every week. In only the second week, he makes a joke that he likes girls who eat carrots. And this becomes our first fan inside joke. And we really latched onto this for a minute, because it was all we had. It's always something, and the video diaries are so fun and a great way to show off the personality of this band, which is so important, and I'm willing to bet won over a lot of people. And furthermore, it definitely helped establish a closer relationship with their fans than had they just been singing once a week and nothing else. We see lots of footage of them being mobbed while they're on the show. They really have made it, whether they win or not. And Judge Danny Minogue says that to them, that whether they win or lose, they've got a future as a band. And this proves to actually be some foreshadowing, as they are eliminated first in the finale episode. Simon assures us, though, that this is only the beginning for One Direction. Immediately after leaving the show, they sign a £2 million deal with Psycho and Modest Management, just like the winners of the show usually do. So they basically won, they just didn't get the winner single release, which, for the record, was going to be a cover of Forever Young by Alphaville. And this is when the machine begins. At the top of 2011, they and the other finalists go to the X Factor live tour across the UK and Ireland. From clips from this tour, we can already see that next level of training that's been done between their last X Factor performance and here. It's like night and day vocally and with stage presence, especially for Zayn and Harry. And throughout the tour, they get even better. They have Niall play guitar, they do a super boy band cover of Grenade. Zayn starts being so much more comfortable, he's killing the runs, belting, all these things that we know become his thing, but we just haven't seen yet. And all of that happened within the span of like 6 months. They went and auditioned for a TV show, and now they are legitimately famous. Normal life has officially ceased to exist. That summer, they go to Sweden and work on their debut album, as any budding pop artist does. We've got Savin Katecha, Rami Yacoub, Red One, vocal training, styling, hairstyling, branding, aka their government-assigned personalities. So their whole thing up until this point has been how real they are. They're just 5 lads. So the archetypes built for them are based on fan perceptions of the way that they are in the videos that they've seen. Harry's the youngest, he's the cheeky little baby. Niall's the sweet one, he's Irish, he's like the runt of the litter. Louis, he's got attitude, he's mouthy, he's the oldest. Zayn's the shy, artsy, kind of like nerdy one. And Liam had the deep voice, and fans found out that he couldn't drink because he only had 1 kidney. So he became like the dad figure. So that was their vibe, very boy next door, like how they present the guys in Angus thongs and perfect snogging, like the cute boys at school. Someone also invents the word directioner at this time. So I'd like to take a moment here to talk about us, the directioners, and the things that we know that haven't had a chance to make it in here yet. Things that sort of fit into those assigned personalities I was talking about. First, Louis. He had the childhood nickname Boo Bear. We wore that one out. He's got a big family, lots of younger sisters. He was very defined in these early days by those jokes made in the diaries. So like, carrots, Superman, no, Jimmy protested. Also, like I said, he was the attitude. We like to say specifically that he was sassy. The sass master, if you will. Oh my god, and I did not remember until I saw this photo, but we also used to talk about his ass all the time. He's also got a girlfriend whose name is Eleanor. She worked at a Hollister as one of the hot people that would stand in the door and convince you to come in. They were called floor models, but because of that name, it was lost somewhere online, and we would say that she was a Hollister model, which was not the case. But she was a fashion queen. There were many outfits imagined based on her style. Zayn. Unfortunately, in like the second video diary, Louis made a joke while describing each of them that Zayn is vain, obviously just because it rhymes. But this was taken seriously, and it became his thing. I guess also because he was undoubtedly the prettiest of them, it kind of worked where it was like, oh, he loves to look at himself in the mirror. I don't know. Like I said, he was sort of shy, he was the first one to get tattoos, he smoked cigarettes, and he wore these big black earrings that looked like his lobes were stretched. I fully thought that until I was editing this video, that he was wearing plugs. So he was the mysterious bad boy for a time. He's since said that he wishes he wasn't so moody and brooding all the time, but like, it worked for us. The smoking thing was big also. This was scary. It had the same effect as people finding out that Nick Jonas has diabetes for some people. And his catchphrase was, "What's happening?" He would say it in the diaries, and I'm assuming off camera a lot, because the other guys like to drop them in reference to him as well. They made a song on the X Factor as bonus online content with Sav and Katacha. Liam. Like I said, dad, 1 kidney, which turned out to be another miscommunication thing. He was born with 1 working kidney, but they both work now, apparently. There was also this photo of him sitting alone with a birthday cake that led fans to concoct a story wherein Liam threw a 16th birthday party and no one attended. He never told this story. That is not something he ever said. So because of this rumor, fans kind of treated him like a lonely old man eating alone. He was often called the Gary Barlow of the group by English press, Gary Barlow being a member of Take That. And this fits into the idea that he was the leader of the group, but that doesn't mean that he was the most popular with fans. He also at one point said that he had a phobia of spoons. So we were like, anti-spoon. He later clarified that by phobia of spoons, he meant that he doesn't like to use spoons at restaurants because they might be dirty. But this turned into like folklore where someone made up a name for it and then claimed it was real, but it was never used before this tweet from Google Facts, and nearly every instance of it being used, including this tweet, referenced Liam as the person who has it. But he doesn't, like he said. He just doesn't like using restaurant spoons, but is fine with forks for some reason. He also has a girlfriend. Her name is Danielle, and she's a dancer. Okay, Niall. Irish. Irish snowflake. He always said that he loved to eat. This feels to me like similar to the Louis Carrot outburst, like 2011 random humor. But we did make eating food his personality in our fan canon. Zayn and Harry were the typical obvious picks as the cutest at this time. So because fans knew this, there was almost like a pity thing for Niall, which is offensive in its own way, but a real fan loves them all equally, so. Harry. He's got a deep voice, he talks really slow. Whenever he says, "for us," it sounds like, "for us." So we milked that. He likes cats. He's also the flirty one. I think that's just a result of him being the most popular member and then compounded with being confident. So, like, obviously you've got young ladies with stories to tell, like tale as old as time. Briefly following their stint on the X Factor, there was a relationship with Extra Factor host Caroline Flack, who was 31 while he was 17 years old. This sort of joined forces with the flirt allegations and some jokes he would constantly make about liking older women, and it became, Harry is the flirt who'll shag your mum. So that's sort of what we got going on here. In August, BBC Radio 1 debuts for the very first time One Direction's first single, What Makes You Beautiful.
Please like it.
It's called What Makes You Beautiful. Here it is.
It's the most boy bandy, popped out song ever, which makes me wonder, why didn't they sing boy band songs on the X Factor? Like, not even an NSYNC song, not even like a little new addition. Like, would the arrangements not have been easier? Was it because they thought it was too predictable? But this makes it clear that boy band music is just exactly what they needed to be doing, because the song is a smash hit. It's super catchy, it's almost got the Summer Nights riff from Grease. It's typical girl of my world, girl of my heart lyrics. I love it. Questionable lyrical content, but on brand for the 2010s. You're beautiful, and what makes you even more beautiful is the fact that you think you're ugly and you're insecure. It's cute. The first semi-live performance of this is on Red or Black. I say semi because the first half of it is basically a music video. Harry's kind of the only one who sings solo for the most part in it, which I guess was fine because he had already become this standout star of the group on the show. The music video goes up on YouTube. They're on the beach in Malibu wearing white and khaki. It's so classic boy band that it had already been parodied by Blink-182 in the All the Small Things video 12 years prior. They have a love interest in this video, which is not at all a common occurrence for reasons I'm sure you can guess. I guess they didn't learn from her. And that video hits 1 million views within a couple days. The song gets officially physically released as a single in September on the 11th with the B-side Na Na Na, which I think is even better than What Makes You Beautiful. It's got this doo-woppy thing going on. But even though I feel that way, I can still see why they chose What Makes You Beautiful. It just has more staying power. It's so catchy. I just love Na Na Na. It debuts at #1 in the UK and Ireland. It breaks the Sony record for pre-orders. Their first real performance outside of the X Factor universe is at the BBC Radio 1 Teen Awards. They sing What Makes You Beautiful and its B-side, Na Na Na, and at this point already, they're pretty much standard fare One Direction. It's actually crazy the turnaround they've had in 1 year, just from last October when they were singing Total Eclipse of the Heart, where they are now. They have a book that comes out around this time that says pretty much everything I've said up until this point. So they're throwing some book signings into that press tour, single signings, album signings. They become the spokespeople for Pokemon Black and White. They do DS ads. All of this promotion, of course, is leading us up to their debut album, Up All Night. Up All Night's released in November. They do so much press, so much merchandise, huge rollout in the UK and Ireland, and they're holding off on the American rollout purposely. They're performing on TV, charity shows, music festivals, radio shows, gay clubs like their boy band forefathers before them, the Question Box in France, which was a crazy popular interview format. A few of these went viral at the time. I'm surprised they've never uploaded them themselves online, but I guess they don't have the permissions to, which sucks because now we'll only ever see it in 360p. It's the perfect format for them. Same reason Gaga and Nicki went viral in this box. It's so personality-based. It's literally just you in a white sensory box with a button that makes the sound of Prince going, ow! The format is video diary-esque. It's perfect for them. This was in all the best One Direction moments compilations.
I got in one little fight and my mom got scared. She said, ooh, ooh. You say that. Mommy with your auntie and uncle in Bel Air.
They're blowing up on YouTube too. They're uploading this 1D cyberpunk series where there's this person who stole One Direction's laptop and is blackmailing them, and they need the help of the fans to get it back. This is all newsletter bait. You have to stay up to date with where 1D Cyberpunk is, so you give them your email and now you're in One Direction's mailing list. But there's also these paper dolls they gave the printouts for, so that's kind of neat. I made some of them, and I will say, it's a lot more difficult and time-consuming than they appear to be. Like, I made all 5 of them. Each of them took me, like, nearly an hour because you have to cut everything out, fold it, paste it, bend it, stick it, slap it, bop it. Like, there's so many, and then you have to cut these head slits. Don't get me started. They perform as the celebrity guests on the X Factor live results for the finale alongside JLS, a little mashup moment. Week before the album, the second single comes out with a music video, Gotta Be You. This is a slower song. We've got some strings, a crazy falsetto chorus. The music video shows them all traveling to the woods via different modes of transportation. Another love interest in this video this time with an implied kiss. And this is the last time we'll ever see a love interest in this video, so kiss her goodbye. This song failed to reproduce the same type of success as What Makes You Beautiful. It being a slower song kind of sets it up that way. But also, like, one of the rules of thumb with popular music is that your chorus should be something that's kind of easy for everyone to sing. This song does not follow that rule. The actual album release day includes a release party and interview uploaded to YouTube. And this album is truly something special. It's not only one of their best albums, I think it's an incredible pop record, an incredible debut record, within the context it exists in, who they are, at the time in which they came out, the musical atmosphere around them. I truly don't think this album could have been done better musically. Now, the photo shoots and album aesthetics, I have a bit of a different opinion on. I truly feel like every song on this album, like even if I put them all in order from the song that I like the most to the song that I like the least, the very last song on that list is still a song that I think is great. And debut albums are hard for boy bands because boy bands are so fan servicey, and it's hard to know really what your audience is going to want that first time around. But because One Direction had the luxury of being on the X Factor, becoming established, having a huge, robust fan base even before this debut album, it's a great debut album for a boy band. It's so well balanced. And I went into listening to all of their albums trying not to be biased, trying to listen to it as myself now and not cloud it with 12-year-old me's opinion of it. And I was thoroughly surprised by just how good this album actually is and how well it holds up for them. These are my overall rankings for this album. You can pause to inspect. From what I've read online in modern times, I do think it's kind of a fringe opinion that I love this album so much, and their dance pop music in general. And I really do think that a part of that comes from that insecurity about liking a pop band, especially a boy band, and like you feel like you have to qualify it with being like, oh, but they actually make adult music. Listen to their later discography, they made real music. It's like, this is real music! And it's not just fans. A lot of people kind of disregarded their first two records for how poppy they are. It's kind of like how Justin Bieber had to find his footing making R&B music, and then people started to take him seriously musically, whereas even though his first two albums are also incredible, people just kind of like shrug them off like, whatever, that's like kiddie music. In December, they embark on their very first solo tour, headlining across the UK and Ireland. We've got video diaries, videos of them playing games and being silly. Niall gets braces. At all these shows, they have a segment where they sit on this couch and answer questions from Twitter. There is endless fan content being served. The album's third single, One Thing, is released during this tour. This music video is what will become like standard fare One Direction. It's shot very casually, run and gun style all over London. They're busking on the street for a crowd of fans. It's much more natural and silly than the previous videos. But let's talk more about the tour. It, like the album, has aesthetics that are very akin to like a Hollister. It's like you're at a beach bonfire with a boy wearing khakis, and they're like rolled up to right under his knee, and he's wearing a plaid flannel shirt, and they're like playing an acoustic guitar. And the concert's actually separated into like seasons, so you start with summer, like I said, you're hanging on the beach with your friends. They have these little like word clouds that come up that are like, love summer, do what we like, catching the surf. Skinny dipping. Parties on the beach, kissing in the sunset, seeing the sun come up. Bonfires in the sand, swimming at midnight. You get the vibes, very like summer love, crazy and we're young and we're free. And then the next segment is fall, which is centered around going to college, which I know is different in England. And it gets very Ralph Lauren, chic, collegiate. The word cloud says new friends, girls and boys, music, hanging around, snogging in the corridor, laughing, falling leaves in the park, working, walking, running for lectures, quadrangles and cloisters. I'm gonna have to Google that one. That wasn't in my college word cloud. Then the term's over and you go on a ski trip. It's like old money, kind of. The word cloud for this one, term's over, snowball fights, boarding the powder, catching air, singing on ski lifts, dancing on tables at Folies, hot chocolate and a roaring fire. They're referencing a bunch of French skiing stuff. This is not what my winter break was like, but they were explicitly telling us what the vibes were. And this concert's great, it's very casual. Again, you see so much growth, even since the X Factor tour. They fully polished it down. They are One Direction now. But in 2012 would come the real test. Will they break in America? This was very hard, nearly impossible, and only previous done by, like, the Spice Girls. Here in America, we had our own heartthrobs. Right now, we were living on a healthy diet of Justin Bieber and mindless behavior, but according to Facebook, everyone wants to be British for some reason, so this just might work. But where does a boy band go in the US to find suitable fans? Welcome to Nickelodeon. They start with opening for another boy band of the time, Big Time Rush, who are actually a fictional band who are then also real because real music was released, kind of like Hannah Montana or the Monkees. And what I find fascinating is that One Direction kind of are Big Time Rush. Big Time Rush in the show were 4 hockey-playing normal guy friends who end up in a boy band managed by a hot-headed big shot producer under the condition that they would do it their way and wouldn't be one of his corny boy bands. That's practically the story of One Direction. What Makes You Beautiful gets officially released in the US in late February. The next week it debuts at number 28 on Billboard Hot 100. And I don't want to lose focus on their success outside of America, of course. Like, What Makes You Beautiful is tearing it up in the UK. They just won their first Brit Award. They've sold 500,000 units. It's mega. But the day before this album is actually released in the US, they played the Today Show, which was originally supposed to be an in-studio performance, but had to be moved outside, where 15,000 fans showed up. No album out in the US. These are Justin Bieber numbers. And they were like this with Nickelodeon at the time. Boom, Big Time Rush Tour. Boom, Kids' Choice Awards. Ba-boom, iCarly episode. This episode of iCarly is truly something. We start with Freddie telling Carly and Sam that he's received an email from world-famous boy band One Direction saying that they are huge fans and would love to perform on their show. We see them do a rehearsal before they go live, everything's great, but then Harry takes a sip from Carly's water bottle. This is a problem because Carly actually has jungle worms. She's not symptomatic, but she is still contagious. Harry falls ill before the show, so Carly and Sam help nurse him back to health, of course. But the problem is, in this universe, Harry is a bad person. He becomes addicted to the attention he's getting from Carly and Sam and continues to play sick even once he's better. You know, like a child. It's been a week. World-famous boy band member Harry Styles has been living in Carly Shé's bedroom for a week. They realize he's faking and decide to trick him into doing the performance by saying he'll be replaced by Gibby, and it works. They do the performance, the end. They were also featured quite a bit on the very short-lived Nickelodeon show You Gotta See This. It starred 2 of the guys from that show How to Rock with Symphonique Miller, and it's kind of like ridiculousness for kids. Ridiculousness meets Fantasy Factory. That's for my real MTV2 viewers. They show internet clips, there's behind-the-scenes stuff, pranks, etc. In the very first episode, Liam, Niall, and Harry get pranked into thinking one of the producers is going into labor. She's not really a producer, she's an actress with a fake bump. Harry's breathing with her, Liam calls her husband for her. Niall does absolutely nothing. And then she reveals that they've been pranked and they all make fun of Harry. And Harry says, rather transparently, that he was thinking the whole time about how this is going to be great press that One Direction delivered a baby. And this did wonders for the reputation of Harry. As if he wasn't already the favorite in the general public, this one had everyone watching like, oh my god, he's so supportive and sweet. Look, he was ready to deliver that baby for that lady. They were featured on a lot of episodes of this show, including episodes that never aired. But it was all just them introducing clips or them playing games in the studio, all shot on the same day based on their outfits, so this is presumably what they were there to shoot the day that they got pranked. The One Directionification of Nickelodeon was so real, and that's exactly how I found out about them. This was my Nickelodeon. Every single commercial break was about their Kids' Choice Awards debut, every single day. And to be honest, I kind of resented them for it. I did, but then I streamed I Won and things changed. One Direction fans back home in the UK weren't very happy with their American rollout. They thought Nickelodeon, iCarly, and the Kids' Choice Awards were all a bit juvenile for a band that's at this point all over 18. And they did do regular press. They did the Today Show and SNL. But I get it, to be across the pond at this time and the other boy bands are JLS and The Wanted, who are both definitely way more adult compared to One Direction, who look like Weenie Hut Jr. And I guess now is a good time to talk about the boy band wars. On the cover of Billboard for March 2012 were both One Direction and The Wanted. That's because on the charts, you had The Wanted at number 3 on the Hot 100 with One Direction at number 19, but on the Billboard 200, the album chart, One Direction had debuted at number 1, being the first English group to do so ever. And The Wanted had an album on the way for next month. To go from a period in which we had no boy bands dominating the charts to 2 in the top 20 was big. Which helped me realize why, even though there were a lot of dance pop tracks on this record, they stuck to a very different vibe for the singles to kind of carve out their own lane, because The Wanted were very dance pop club in Ibiza type vibe. And a lot of the pitting against each other came from outside sources initially, and not so much the bands actually beefing with each other. In the 90s, when the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC were huge, the boy band wars were a big thing, where you team Backstreet or team NSYNC. But in this instance, I feel like it was really unnecessary. They clearly appealed to different demographics. The Wanted were all drinking age in the US, their songs were more suggestive and party-driven. They were also managed by Scooter Braun, who famously manages Justin Bieber, who, like I said before, I think One Direction thrived partly because they were a great alternative for the tweenie boppers who wanted something less done up and superstarified. They were the British Justin Bieber of boy bands. One Direction were super sanitized in their public image. Yeah, you could find them being a bit cheeky online, but for the most part, it was family-friendly fun. They were on Nickelodeon, and they were younger too, only marginally, but I'd argue that when you're under 23, every year makes a big difference. But despite their clearly distinguishable differences in their home market, in the US, these two British boy bands were already outselling all of our homegrown talent. So it became a question: One Direction or The Wanted? Well, in theory it did. I was never asked this by anyone in the world. But because of the media comparisons, the beef actually became real. They would shade each other in interviews and on stage at concerts. They'd be like, no, we don't have beef with those little guys. No, they're in competition to us from the bottom of the charts. Of course not, no. And they'd eventually go on to have a really stupid Twitter beef, so the boy band wars were back. In a way. All this hubbub and the massive success of their opening spot with Big Time Rush led to another leg being added to the Up All Night tour, adding Australia, New Zealand, and North America, with arenas double the size in most cases. During this tour, because Niall didn't have a lot of solos, there was a rumor started that on the next record he'd be mostly playing guitar. This spiraled into different theories, like management was muting his microphone and pushing him to the back, and there were even times on tour where he would just play guitar, no Britney mic to sing into. So fans started the hashtag Let Niall Sing movement to tell management to let him sing. And I think that this is an interesting feature of boy band success born of the internet, because they're doing harmonies. There's always going to be someone at the bass or at the top that you don't necessarily hear as the main voice. But they're all so integral to the way that the complete harmony comes together and sounds. I'm sure that if you were a Lance girl when NSYNC was hot, you were probably pissed about how few solos Lance got. But you didn't have a public forum to share it on. A public forum where you would meet other Lance girls. A public forum where you and the other Lance girls would petition Lou Pearlman demanding more Lance solos. It just wasn't feasible back then. I genuinely think One Direction might be one of the first boy bands that this was a major, loud concern for. And not just because of logistics, like I mentioned before, but because in the past, groups had lead singers. Beyonce was the lead singer of Destiny's Child. She wasn't self-absorbed and making everything about her. She was the lead singer. That was her job, to sing lead. But ideally for fans, One Direction would not have a lead. They would all be equally loved. And if you suggested otherwise, you were wrong and the enemy. And as much as we probably hate to hear it, the hate towards Modest was probably like water off a duck's back. They don't care. They aren't going to go tell the producers of the album to let Niall sing more because of it. If anything, this is just proof to them that the group that they're managing is doing so well that even the vocalist who's at the bottom of the harmonies you hear the least on the record, who isn't the face of the group in the press, has so many fans that they made a petition. This is nothing but good news for them. This is a period of astronomical success for them. It was non-stop. Their show in Bournemouth has turned into a movie, the Up All Night tour movie. And the press doesn't stop there. They're doing more signings, more meet and greets, all during this tour. The final single of this album is More Than This, which doesn't get the proper single treatment in the US like What Makes You Beautiful did. But I would still argue that this song is the anthem of their US debut. They were on every radio show in this country with an acoustic guitar and a dream singing the song, doing the same harmonies over and over and over again. Like if I had $1 for every acoustic performance of this song I watched in 2012, I could buy One Direction. And speaking of radio stations, in 2012 there was a radio host, the youngest nationally syndicated radio host in the country, who also happened to be a very popular YouTuber. Miss Andrea Russett. And the Venn diagram for Andrea Russett fans and One Direction fans had major overlap, at least in the US, because, like I said, so online driven, and she was an online creator. And in late May of 2012, Andrea Russett met One Direction and interviewed Liam, and it was huge. Everyone already wanted to be her, and now she was having a Nerf gun fight with One Direction. And I felt like this was interesting foreshadowing for modern pop culture, because now every celebrity's on somebody's podcast. But at this time, to see a 17-year-old YouTuber interviewing someone as insanely famous as One Direction was crazy. Another thing you'd have seen as a One Direction fan on YouTube at this time was the adventurous adventures of One Direction. This was a 17-minute long animated short film written, voiced, animated, and uploaded by Mark Parsons, who at the time was an animator for Archer. So this was exciting for One Direction fans to see someone online who was not making fun of One Direction, because like I said, qualifications. The video itself has One Direction as superheroes who work for Simon. It's full of innuendos and jokes about fan trivia stuff. It's fun. It was also huge because, well, that's just what happens now. One Direction were officially the new teen sensations. Anything that has them in it, is about them, talks about them, is gonna blow up. This is the same place Justin Bieber is, where Britney Spears once was, now also stand One Direction. And like the fans before them, the Directioners, were ready to eat up everything you put in front of us, and to give complete allegiance to this boy band. Traditionally, fangirls always make whoever they're a fan of their entire personality. That's why they're given a pejorative name like fangirl. But part of liking One Direction as an American was being part-time British. You wished you were British. You wished you had an accent. You wished you were going to school in London, eating a crumpet next to Big Ben on a double-decker bus on your way to the phone booth. You pretended it was normal to call your mom Mum without a British accent, like a Canadian. And when the 2012 Summer Olympics came around, well, lucky you! Because Tom Daley was on the UK swim team, and everyone thought he was so cute. So now we could even support England in the Olympics. Give me my citizenship now. And the 2012 Olympics also happened to be hosted in London. So for the closing ceremony, they brought all their greats: Madness, the Pet Shop Boys, Queen, George Michael, Annie Lennox, Muse, The Who, the Spice Girls, Take That, and some newer acts: Jessie J, Teeny Tempa, and Tayo Cruz, neither of which I knew were British until making this video, Ed Sheeran, and One Direction. And Jessie J performed with Queen. All these acts were breaking majorly all over the world. Dare I say it was another British invasion? The first British invasion was in the 60s, the second was in the 80s, and it's debated that there was a third with the British soul artists who were huge in the 2000s: Amy Winehouse, Adele, Joss Stone, Jewel, Natasha Bedingfield, Duffy, Leona Lewis, you get the point. But this one was different, and I can show you better than I can tell you. In 2008, people wanted to be British like this. In 2012, we wanted to be British like this. Some people say the royal wedding between William and Kate was the catalyst for this British invasion, which sounds plausible, but think about it. Adele, Ellie Goulding, One Direction, Jessie J, Marina and the Diamonds, Cher Lloyd, Mumford & Sons, Calvin Harris, The Wanted, Coldplay were having another huge moment, Sam Smith, so many English artists breaking huge in the US. What better cover would you suggest for One Direction on their sophomore album than all five boys playing around being silly on top of and inside of an iconic red phone booth? And you might be thinking, hold on, let me check the calendar and my detailed notes I've been taking. At what point have they had time to record an album? I'm actually so glad that you asked that. Well, they didn't have time to record an album. That's why they recorded it while they were on tour, while they did all of that other press and traveling. They just put out their first single 1 year ago. But this is a boy band. Young fans are fickle. We have to strike while the iron is hot. We need another album. In September, they make their debut at the MTV VMAs, performing One Thing. Their style's evolving. Harry tends to go more t-shirt and jeans, little booty. Niall and Zayn do sneakers, Liam, Louis, Converse, button-ups, etc. The hair is actually pretty much styled all the same way, regardless of hair texture or length. I don't know how I never noticed this at the time, but they legitimately all have the same exact hairdo. Zayn's debuting a new blonde streak, Louis' hair is vertical, and as the stages that they were on grew larger, people, parents, wondered, where is their choreography? One Direction fans were fighting for our lives to defend them against, honestly, kind of valid criticisms. When I watch these videos now, I'm like, they really were just running around. But that is what made it cool. Like, you just had to be a teen or tween, maybe, because I didn't want them to dance. That would have been stupid and lame, and One Direction were not stupid or lame. They take home the award for Song of the Summer, as well as Best New Artist, for which they were up against The Wanted, Janelle Monáe, Carly Rae Jepsen, and Frank Ocean. Niall and Zayn hang out with Justin Bieber afterwards and post this selfie with a dashing amount of Instagram filter on it. Love it. This was great because One Direction and Justin Bieber fans ward sometimes, for some reason. There can only be one. Or five. And I guess now I have to bring up Plastic Bieber. This was an account that wasn't just a Justin Bieber fan that didn't like One Direction. This was a full-on One Direction bait account. They tweeted every single, classically terrible tabloid thing that you could say about every member of One Direction. And then, also every racist and Islamophobic thing they could think to say about Zayn. I'm not gonna put pictures of this because, obviously, what an account like this wanted was attention. And I'm not gonna give it to them. This was never funny, never will be, and I wanna make something clear here. This account said that they were an 11-year-old Justin Bieber fan and talked very explicitly about having sex and doing things 11-year-olds should not do. There is no universe in which I think this was ever at any point an actual 11-year-old. Or a Justin Bieber fan. This was a weird-ass person with no life who was way too old to be doing this shit. But we rallied. We went hard against Plastic Bieber. It was very, very serious. And they disappeared eventually. There was a point where people were saying that Plastic Bieber was the girl from that viral video where she falls off of a stool while she's talking about selling Girl Scout cookies and knocks the wind out of herself and starts crying for her mom. It's not really a funny video. It's very like America's Funniest Home Videos, ridiculousness core video of someone getting hurt. But I remember that One Direction fans would be like, that's Plastic Bieber? And I completely forgot about this whole arc until I was looking up Plastic Bieber for this video, and stills from that kept coming up and being like, this is Plastic Bieber. And there was this video that was titled Girl Scout Cookies, Plastic Bieber Falling. Please read the description. So of course I read the description, which said, this is the video where Plastic Bieber falls and hits her head and cries for mommy. So funny. A must see. Hey you, stop telling me this is not Plastic Bieber. Recently, I've learned this is not Jessica. This is a little girl called Brooke or something. Plastic Bieber has been posing as this little girl and has ruined the girl's life. I feel so bad for her and I wish I could help her, but yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to take down the video. Thanks for your consideration. So this implies that Plastic Bieber themselves posted this video online saying, oh, this is me. A troll told you, yeah, this is me, and it's a video where the subject is, quite frankly, humiliated. Come on, guys, why would that be true? I know we were 13, but come on. But in the end, I'm sure the people running accounts like this have exactly the lives they deserve, and that's why they take it out on everyone else. And this is a big time for that baity type of internet shit. It's the same way setup accounts work now. They'll have like a Meghan Trainor looking stan account and then tweet a bunch of hate tweets for people with big stan bases. And then everyone's like, oh, you stan Meghan Trainor. And it's like, now Meghan Trainor's catching strays for no reason. It's like cut for Bieber type shit. Weird 4chan types getting online and pretending to be little girls doing something crazy or malicious in order to incite emotional reactions out of actual little girls. Just very, very strange behavior. Let's move on, shall we? Take Me Home. The first single from this album was a song called Live While We're Young, which became the first ever leak. I think this kind of is a testament to how big they'd gotten so fast, like already their first leak. They announced the song a month before the release in a, for some reason now deleted video, that it would be on iTunes for pre-order that night. Then only 4 days until the release of the songs, the video is leaked. Their release for the music video gets moved up and is published to Vivo early. It's really just them playing around on a summer's day. Like, there's not much to it. There's some props, this hamster ball, these big microphones, and the pool. They're just being silly. A lot of their stuff, as they get more fans, becomes more in tune with what the fans want, which is very personality-based. It's like if every Backstreet Boys video was the Everybody video. And this song's like What Makes You Beautiful's cousin sonically. They're going for the exact same thing with this album's lead single. A fun little pop summer ditty, but more pop rock than dance pop. The lyrics are a touch more suggestive than What Makes You Beautiful though. They're talking about sneaking out and getting some. They're growing up. And they had truly broke in the US. This song sold more than 300,000 units in the first week in the States alone. It was number 3 on Billboard, 3 on UK singles. Things were looking fabulous for this rollout. A rollout which included interviews and performances on every TV show, a Pepsi commercial with New Orleans Saints quarterback Drew Brees.
Give me the Pepsi, I'll get you a tryout.
Cool. Hit me, Drew.
A performance on the BBC Radio 1 Teen Awards, an X Factor performance, of course. Also, during this press tour, Liam gets a buzz cut, images are changing, and then it's time. In early November, their sophomore album, Take Me Home, is released. This album was a strategically calculated next move from Up All Night. Let's look back at the track listing for that album. Based on my calculations, we've got 4 dance pop songs, 3 ballads, 3 pop rock songs, 4 power pop songs, and 4 regular old bubblegum pop songs. The singles, though, a power pop song, a pop ballad, another power pop song, and another ballad. Without a doubt, the most successful of these songs were One Thing and What Makes You Beautiful, the power pop songs. Now that One Direction's a bit more established, they can see what the fans like, and now they can have their own sound, which is clearly going to be this power pop rock in which the pop is a super bubblegum pop. It's kind of a genre that not many other people were doing at the time. The other pop songs at this time have a lot of dance and dubstep and even hip-hop influence, so this is truly carved out for One Direction. You'd never confuse a Wanted song and a One Direction song anymore. There are 0 dance pop songs on this record, to my dismay. But as a result, we get a very upbeat, modern teen pop record. And I thought it was interesting when I was listening to the record, the instrumentals sound like they could easily be from an episode of Victorious, and I say that with the utmost respect. Take Me Home leans fully into the sound from the first half of Up All Night. We've streamlined our writing producing teams on this one. We still have our dream team with Remy Yacoub, Carl Falk, and Savin Katecha. We unlock a second team with Julian Bonetta, John Ryan, and Jamie Scott, and they have entries alongside McFly, who you'll remember one of the members from McFly was responsible for I Want. Ed Sheeran pens 2 songs for this record, Little Things and Over Again, which is a song that can only be described as Sheeran. I can hear him singing the words through One Direction. And this is one of my favorites on this album, but I can't help but wonder how much more I would like it if the lyrics were better. But these are my full rankings for the album. I do think leaning into the power pop, teen pop thing instead of the dance pop leads to some corny lyrics in this album, but I can overlook that for now. But we should know that none of that even matters. They were in the stratosphere. This album did just as well as the last record, faster. It debuted at number 1 again, and they did this huge show on Ellen where it was an outdoor concert with a huge crowd. They did the Today Show again, huge crowd. They performed for the Queen at the Royal Variety Show. And the album also came with the release of the second single in some places, Little Things. This is one of the Ed Sheeran tracks. It's got What Makes You Beautiful, 2011, Disease, and the lyrics. I loved this song when it came out. I was confused about why it got hate, but now when I listen to it as an adult, I obviously have different opinions. I don't hate it, obviously, but it's like, if this song came out when I was an adult, I'd be like, oh, shut up. When you're 13, you're like, oh, I do have to squeeze into my jeans. I hate the way my voice sounds on recording. Aw, my boys care about me. But this is important. Fostering these parasocial relationships is key for a boy band. And with this song, they were doing it marvelously. And merchandising is a great tool for One Direction. Just like the merchandising giants before them, like Hannah Montana and Camp Rock, you could get pretty much any item you wanted in a One Direction version. One Direction lunch kit and thermos? Of course. One Direction mug? Yeah. Popsicles? Duh. Blow dryer? Of course. Press-on nails? Sure. One Direction duct tape? Yeah. And when it came to the normal things you would sell as an artist, like your record, they went above and beyond to upsell. For Up All Night, you could get the standard, sure, or you could get the yearbook edition. These ones are much nicer. They're little books, and you could put them on your bookshelf because it will not fit in your CD rack. But you could also get the souvenir edition, which was back in the CD format, but had extra songs, so you might as well just get this one too. And for Take Me Home, I think they got a little carried away with themselves. They released a standard, a yearbook, and an expanded edition. The standard edition and the yearbook edition are the exact same as last time, so you would assume that the expanded would operate like the souvenir edition. No. This one was $60 because it contained a t-shirt and a book with special artificial reality compatible pictures. And this is because of a joint venture between Sony and the company Zapper. It's kind of like a QR code, but you scan the pictures instead of the code. And it brings you to basically a link tree with animations. In this book, it's supposed to make pictures come to life. So I think sometimes instead of the link tree, you would see the actual video that this is a still of instead of the still image. I have this book because my friend loaned it to me, so I got excited to use the Zapper app and see the pictures come to life. And this book is a complete ripoff. I think fans were just happy to have it being the book and the box and the t-shirt, and they didn't really care about the contents, because this is a load. Most of the pictures in this book are stills from the Live While We're Young video. Like, we've seen every single thing that's in this, and I'm willing to bet that the Zapper just shows you a video clip that the still is from the video that we've all seen. And I wish that I could confirm what it does, but it's attached to its own One Direction book app that doesn't exist anymore, and the Zapper app doesn't work with it, so it's just a book. There is thankfully a preview that we can watch to see what's in store. So it looks like the book just screams and makes the picture go away. Maybe not as good as my idea, but I guess it's too late to tell them now. And now see, they've been big in the UK, but for us everywhere else, this era is kind of Up All Night Junior. Like, it was made to further the agenda of the last record. Even the graphic design is the same on this album as the last one. But this is because they were already on such a huge meteoric rise, they were like, keep it pushing. Already a new record with such quick turnaround, they did not want to give people 1 second to forget about them. They're on the cover of every magazine that a teen girl might run her eyes across, and with the historic year that they had, what better way to finish it off than with a show at New York City's iconic Madison Square Garden? And this was meant to be a great night, not just for the boys, but for us fans. But was it? Of course.
Mr. X.
I did my best to piece together the events of this from my memory and also what I could find online. How I remember it going is that leading up to One Direction's big show at Madison Square Garden, a mysterious anonymous account posted to Tumblr that they were going to kill One Direction. It turns out that's not what happened. I tried to sit down and get the actual factual story and tell you what was really going on, kind of in the way that I tried to debunk that fake Amanda Bynes account in the other video. I sat here for days. I sifted through the same Tumblr posts. I tried Googling, I tried DuckDuckGo. But unfortunately, this is a saga that occurred mainly on Tumblr, and a lot of old Tumblr posts are simply lost to time. And another thing about Tumblr is that they have one of the worst search features of any website ever to exist. It is impossible to find something on Tumblr unless you have a direct link to it, and even then, the person probably deleted their account, so you're never gonna find it. I finally gave in and watched other people's videos about it, mainly on TikTok, but they usually just go over those surface level details, probably because it's impossible to retrace. So, this is what I found from my extensive research. At some point in late November 2012, an account began posting cryptic things related to One Direction, saying that they knew them personally and that there was a storm currently happening that many fans would not survive. Usually, from what I can tell, this was about their romantic relationships. Some members of One Direction had partners, like I mentioned earlier. Harry and Taylor Swift are dating right now, according to the tabloids. There's also a big sector of One Direction fans who believe that Harry and Louis are in a secret relationship that they were being forced to hide by management. But if you're watching this video, I'm sure you're fully aware of that. And that's the bulk of what this account talked about. Not details about those theories, but just the fact that the theories existed. So usually it would circle back to the fans being the storm in the boy's life. And this distinction's important for right now. Fans theorized, based on their weird posts and the cryptic way they'd respond to people, that they were someone who was close to the band. Not super close, though. They even did us the favor of giving us a list of people they aren't. But they know the band, and they are also a directioner. And they're on our side, just trying to help us. What with? No one knows. And they frequently would comment on posts that would be like, I understand Mr. X. He's trying to tell us all that Larry is bullshit and we're ruining the boys' lives. And the account would be like, good theory. The bulk of what I'm assuming was their, manifesto was posted as long text post journal entries. These journals are gone. There are 5 original Mr. X text post journals. I was only able to find 1 and 5. Here's journal 1. It's coming to that point where everything is coming to an end. Most of you, from what I've seen, will survive. But there are still some of you who are barely on the verge of survival. You still don't get it. Why? It's baffling when everything you're confused about is so crystal clear. Be smart. P.S. This wasn't a long journal, I apologize. The storm's gotten pretty intense. This account that I've been talking about, The Real Mr. X, has Internet Archive captures dating back to late November 2012. Now, there are kind of 2 schools of thought when it comes to Mr. X. One was attached to this account, which, from my evidence, is the original Mr. X account that people were interacting with. The other school usually received Mr. X news from anonymous places, and these were usually more riddly than the original account. While the original account kind of writes like they're in an action movie or something, just generally corny and always referring to whatever they're talking about like it's a legit matter of life and death for the entire planet, the anonymous messages are usually not typed in a way that reflected the sort of personality on this account. So though they were impersonating Mr. X by name, they weren't doing it by personality. And it was almost always through Tumblr anonymous messages. They sent someone this quote from a play and everyone was like, okay, so Mr. X is obviously really smart because that was a random smart person play. And it wasn't that random. It was adapted into a very successful HBO miniseries. All it took was having the internet to find it, so clearly you could reverse engineer that. This could be anybody. And what I think is crazy about the anonymous messages is that the shadow figure of Mr. X, whose credibility is already not there, would message them not from the already anonymous Mr. X account, which would be the only way to verify that they are Tumblr user The Real Mr. X, but they would message them anonymously. The way that I could, the way that you could, the way that anyone in the world could, and they could just write whatever they wanted and sign it Mr. X, and people would go, oh, new Mr. X. And then every day, because this was happening, it got more and more fans talking about it. They're bringing it to Instagram and Twitter, which housed other factions of the fan base. Like it was a different ecosystem on each website. Another Mr. X account pops up. This is the one that you're probably most familiar with. Tumblr user Mr. Exposed. This account is where things turned violent. Their first post was on December 2nd. It's still up. You can look at it right now. It says, 5 little birds are trapped in a cage. 1 fell off the stage. 4 little birds, the cage is getting narrow. 1 little bird got shot by an arrow. 3 little birds come out to play. 1 will die at the end of the day. 2 little birds are about to die. No one hears his painful cries. The 4 dead birds, the last one mourned. His heart was tragically torn. And one thing you may be able to notice is that this is a shitty poem. It's written like a 4th grader wrote it. But we were all very young, so we got scared. Because this is a death threat. Mr. X, as the lore states, is a close personal friend of One Direction who's trying to help the fans. Why then would he be predicting their deaths via limerick now? Like, someone clearly saw how fans were creeped out by the existence of this anonymous shadow figure who knew One Direction and talked about the storm that no one would survive, and decided to make them into a horror character. So it expanded to Omegle. One Direction fans would go on Omegle with interests such as One Direction, 1D, etc., and they would go to meet other fans, or if you were like me, hope that you randomly run into one of the members who was bored on their downtime scrolling through Omegle. Some people even put their interest as Mr. X. So you'd get matched with a black screen, and you'd be like, X? And then you'd receive some type of riddle. It started out being mostly the same ones that were on the Mr. Exposed Tumblr account, but they were known to get a little creative. Any rational person clearly can see that these are just a bunch of random people trying to scare the mostly tween-age One Direction fans who are spamming this looking for Mr. X clues. But a Mr. X truther would tell you that there wasn't just one Mr. X, you fool. Mr. X is a member of a collective, an alliance. No one X has total control. So no matter what you say, people want to believe what they'll believe, so cheers to you and Mr. X, I guess. So my experience with Mr. X, this is the post that I remember. I think it's an Omegle screenshot. Maybe the One Direction at the top is from where it says you both like X topic that you both put in. But it's markedly more violent than any of the original Mr. X posts. This is Mr. X. Say goodbye to your precious One Direction. The storm is coming. 4 will stay as 1 will fall with millions of others. I have officially won. You better watch for your precious boys at Madison Square Garden. It will happen quickly. You Directioners are next. This is a pretty explicit threat, still using the storm terminology, even though they're saying it's coming, while the original Mr. X said it's already happening. They also now are explicitly saying that Madison Square Garden is where this will go down, whereas all the other Mr. X's were a little bit more vague and anonymous about what exactly they had planned. But I guess the real evidence against Mr. X is that nothing happened at Madison Square Garden. Obviously, no one's dead. The show went off without a hitch. The night of the show, there were of course rumors that someone with the Marvel-ass name Samantha Xavier was arrested with a gun. There's no proof that this person exists. No news outlets reported that a person with a weapon was arrested at the One Direction show at Madison Square Garden. But more importantly, none of the supposed Mr. X accounts claimed Samantha Xavier as a member of their team. In fact, from what I could find, they all vehemently denied that they were the ones making physical threats against them. Because again, those all came from anonymous sources. But some people saw the riddles as predictions and not threats. I think they were neither. They were someone who likes to lie and tell stories online. Mr. X has continued to pop up from time to time, even in modern times. But I will be dedicating no more time to it, as every single interaction that has and will ever exist, to me, is very clearly either a troll or a liar or someone unrelated using the name Mr. X. Because Mr. X is a very common anonymous pseudonym, so not everyone that's using the name Mr. X is related to One Direction. Huge news, guys. I found it. So earlier I said that I could only find journals 1 and 5. That was the old me. I found most of them now, but the most important one is this one. Journal number 3, posted on December 2nd, 2012, the night before One Direction plays Madison Square Garden. As you can see, it's very, very long, but it contains a lot of very important information about Mr. X. The main message of this post is pretty much what I said earlier, what fans theorized. Fans are the storm in the boys' lives because they make drama, attack people, and most importantly to Mr. X, they push Larry as a romance instead of a bromance like the rest of the ships. Here's an excerpt. You turned this storm into a bigger situation than it was meant to be. You did, not me. I never wanted all the attention. You got me this attention. You put the spotlight onto me and onto yourselves. This is all fake. There is no actual storm. None of the boys are going to be hurt. They never were going to be hurt. And all the things saying that they were not from me. They were from other people in the fandom who decided to hurt other people by saying those things. You guys took it too far. You guys are hurting yourselves. You. The whole post is them trying to make some grand philosophical point about how it was some kind of social experiment where they were holding up a mirror to the fandom. I don't buy it. I think they got cold feet when other people got scary and had to walk it all back. Also, they don't know One Direction, but they were honest about everything else. Everything else, which was that there was a storm happening. But if you don't know them, then the fact that there's a storm means nothing. Everyone thought you meant that there was something happening to One Direction. So yeah, that puts a nice little bow on things. It's also funny that this happened before Madison Square Garden, but all of this continued during the day of Madison Square Garden and all night with all the Omegle stuff. It just goes to show that their heroic and noble page that they made ended up spiraling into something out of their control. Great job. Now that we've talked about that, let's get back to the timeline. So 2012 is ending. Within 1 year, One Direction debuted America and then played a show in America's most famous venue. In January, Kiss You is released as the third single from this album, the second single in the US. This is my favorite music video of theirs so far. It's another personality-driven video. They're on set, shooting in front of green screens. It's referencing a lot of 60s Technicolor movies. A little Beach Boys serve, which is perfect for the na-na-na section of this song. It is number 3 in the UK, number 2 in the US, and now it's time for the new year. And 2013, I'd say, was probably One Direction's peak culturally. So prepare yourself. The year starts with a lot of jet setting. They're in the States, they're at the NRJ Awards, they're in Ghana for Comic Relief, then they go to Japan. In February's Red Nose Day, this is a telethon put on by Comic Relief. We see the footage they captured on their visit to Ghana. Each of them spent a day saying the life of different people. They all went to a school and a hospital and talked about how donations can help get more kids in school and more immunizations to the babies. It is really a devastating watch. They also put out a song to raise money, a cover of One Way or Another by Blondie, mashed together with a cover of the Undertones' Teenage Kicks. The music video is partially self-filmed. It's very low budget, and they say at the beginning of the video that they did that so that they could donate the rest of the money they saved on an expensive video to Comic Relief. It shows different clips shot during the press tour so far, and of course featuring the people of Ghana for whom they are raising the money. Then also this month, we start the Take Me Home tour. They would be on tour from February until October. Their opening act for this tour, the first set opener they've ever had. Remember, this is only the second headlining tour they've ever done. The opener will be an Australian band who picked up some steam on YouTube and was picked up by none other than Sony. The story is that Louis found them on YouTube, which I didn't really believe at the time, but One Direction actually owned a portion of 5 Seconds of Summer. Like, they got a cut of their releases like their team did, so I guess they weren't lying. But they start blowing up in One Direction fan world now because they're opening and now everyone can find a favorite and edit pictures of themselves with the members. But let's talk about the tour. This was my first One Direction concert. We drove hours and stayed in a hotel. I never did stuff like that for concerts as a kid or a teen, so that's how serious this was. It's longer and of course less intimate than the Up All Night tour was. On average, a minimum of 10,000 seats, with shows up to the 100,000 ballpark. The screens this time are less vibes and more shenanigans. The intro screen is house party themed. Then for the second act, they all leave and pile into a car. Then for the third act, they all drive to town where they pretend to be old people and do silly things on the street. You'll also notice that in the short time since the last tour, we've completely shed the assigned personality adjacent wardrobes, as displayed by the fact that they're wearing nearly identical outfits. Which is funny, because they weren't like other boy bands because they were left to their own devices to get dressed. But it turns out they all dress the same anyway. Yeah, just skinny jeans and t-shirts. They still have things that are their thing. Zayn wears leather jackets sometimes. Harry always has this headband. And he wears mostly just black t-shirts and black jeans and boots. Niall does tank tops and high tops. Liam's got the snapbacks. Louis going very band tee this tour. The hair does many different things throughout. They were experimenting with his hair still. And for the first few months of the tour, they're just touring. Once they get back to the US, it's back to work. In fact, they've already started their next album rollout. You're probably like, wait, what? Aren't they on tour right now? When did they record an album? Which is a stupid question. Remember when I said that on the first part of the tour they were just touring? I lied. You should have known that. They were never just doing anything. This is their peak, and their team plans to wring out every red cent that this band is worth while we're here. We've got a collection with Office Depot, wax figures, 5 covers for GQ magazine, a perfume that was teased with a short film, a new single, oh yeah, and a movie, a real one with a theater release. So let's break that down. In March, photos were released of One Direction being measured and sized for their very own wax figures at Madame Tussauds. Madame Tussauds is an iconic piece of London history, so it makes sense that one of England's biggest exports would be featured. They show us some of the principal sculpting, everything's coming together just fine. When they're unveiled in April, they're scary, but they're fine. They're dressed in their teenage clothes but measured on their adult bodies, so it's a little unsettling. They do a big release in London, One Direction are there. As part of the promotion for this, they pretend to be wax figures and prank fans. These wax figures famously deteriorated in front of our eyes. Well, there's actually 4 versions of these One Direction figures. It's a long story, but I am a scholar of these figures, so just trust me. These ones were last seen in Singapore in 2019, But the ones you can still see are the second versions. These were put up in London immediately when the originals started touring. They're now in Bangkok on a jet. And the absolutely terrifying, shocking, disgusting, heinous, and absolutely appalling 4th set, which debuted in San Francisco in 2015. Those ones ended up in Vienna, so you can still see them. London kept the 3rd set that they made in 2014, but they retired them in 2020. But then people were sad about it, so they brought them back. And then they got rid of them again in 2022. They just didn't announce it this time, so no one could make a movement to get them back. So, you're welcome for that wealth of information about One Direction's wax figures. It was announced in spring that One Direction would be teaming up with the US office supply store chain Office Depot to create a line of school supplies that would raise money for anti-bullying programs in schools. The collection dropped in June. Every item was under $10, which was great and affordable. But it also meant that it was kind of crap. I had the composition notebook, the dividers, and the Zayn binder. The composition notebook was standard, the dividers were okay, they were less sturdy than other kinds of dividers you would usually buy. Like, if these came free with the binder, you wouldn't really care, but they were paper instead of plastic, which, in hindsight, great for the environment, but not practical for use. Especially because I personally never wanted to write on them. But my biggest gripe was the binders. I was a major binder kid from the moment that I discovered that they existed in like 3rd grade until high school. So obviously, I'm gonna get the binder with Zayn having my favorite hair, duh. But this binder was made of cardboard. All binders are made of cardboard, but they have a plastic sheet that goes over them. And then if you get lucky, sometimes they'll have clear windows that you could use on the front, side, and back. These ones were just straight up cardboard and paper. I can overlook the crappy, very small rings, but no pockets? You're going to sell me a paper binder and you're not even going to put a pocket in it? Like, yeah, it was affordable, but you could get a binder that had all of those things for even cheaper now, 10 years later. So they ripped us again. Like, of course, it's One Direction merchandise and it's all under $10, so of course it's going to be crap because they don't care about actually making the product good, they just want the money. But it was the thought that counts. Like I said, I still got the binder, and I never even used it because I knew it would just get messed up because it was built horribly. So I kept it and preserved it in a little ottoman tucked away in a closet at my parents' house. But then one day, the closet got water damage. And since the binder was made completely out of paper with no plastic protection, it was destroyed. So I should have just used it anyway. Kind of poetic in a way. Okay, anyway. Next, they do 5 different covers of GQ magazine. GQ, Gentleman's Quarterly, is a men's magazine. This might possibly be the first time they ever appeared on something that was marketed explicitly not just to women, but to tween girls. This was big. The interview sucks. The pull quotes suck. And the way he talks about teenage girls at a concert sucks. But that doesn't matter. The fact that they're in GQ and they're doing this photo shoot is what matters. Not the stupid rage bait interview that was enjoyed neither by fans of One Direction or GQ readers, I'm sure. It's all about the photo shoot. Even though we're still touring Take Me Home, aesthetics are changing, even since the beginning of this rollout. And we're about to start another rollout in the middle of this tour. And even for the fans, a lot of us were on Tumblr in 2012, like I said, but we were using Tumblr in this way. But now we've been on there for a while and everything's becoming about aesthetics. We're also streaming Marina and the Diamonds and Lana Del Rey and Arctic Monkeys and the 1975, which Harry tweets the lyrics to one of their songs in June, which did in fact put a lot of people on. They'll try to deny it, but it's okay, babe. I get it. We're still One Direction fans, but in a more tasteful way, a more aesthetic way. We're kind of like mashing the different aesthetics together of the LOL You're Not Matt Healy into LOL You're Not Harry Styles shirts, the like Jack Van Ack Rude Love Hearts thing, editing the boys with flower crowns, the man-ups became chic and visco filtered out. Your layout on Twitter became so important around this time on fan Twitter, like black and white Harry pic with flower crown, oil slick header, cute punny username, and aesthetic-y display name. Then post that you'll make man-ups for people if they follow and retweet. 200 followers by the end of the day. 1,000 by the end of the week. And there's also like a wacky, random humor type of internet Tumblr thing going on here. Like when me and my friends went to the Take Me Home tour, we all brought those creepy masks because we thought it would be funny. And it was. It was a hit. We got lots of compliments. Like, some people's Twitter was more pizza slime header, funny picture of Niall, username ass crack, but it was still seen as more tasteful than like early One Direction fan carrot posting. So carrot at this time became derogatory. The I like girls who like carrots thing was a joke that happened 3 years ago, and most fans were over it 2 years ago. So when a newer fan would tap into One Direction and discover those old obvious things like carrots and spoons and calling them those nicknames, it became a tell that you were a new fan or a surface level fan or a fake fan, which we called carrots. So we've created our own fandom infighting. One Direction, you are huge. In July, One Direction teases a promotional single for their upcoming movie, This Is Us. They first dropped the name, which would be Best Song Ever, and they asked fans to sing their best 1D song ever. So, like, post covers, I guess. The next week we get a little teaser. The teaser includes a short 20-second snippet of the song's chorus with the description inviting fans to post videos to Instagram where they try and guess how the rest of the song goes. They're not only asking fans to grid post One Direction content while we're all curating an artsy persona, but they want us to sing also. And I guess that's why of the 1.8 million viewers on this video, there are only 97 posts under the hashtag. And yes, some people probably deleted the post or the whole account, so that's not a full view of what it would have been then. But it was definitely still low, definitely under 1,000. Leading up to the movie's release and, of course, the music video, they did a sweepstakes on Disney Channel. Every day on YouTube, there was a little countdown where they would reveal characters from the video. And then a few days later, the song was released along with the music video on Vivo. This video was written by James Corden and directed by Ben Winston, who, friend of Harry Styles, they were living together at this time. He has a very long resume. He's a close friend of James Corden, actually worked with him on his hit sitcom Gavin and Stacey. He did the first One Direction docu in the making. He's a producer on This Is Us. He also invented carpool karaoke and is now the executive producer of the Kardashians, so just some fun facts. The premise of the video is that One Direction are in Hollywood to meet with label executives to talk about the plot of their new video. Meta. Oh, and all of the characters are played by One Direction, so these two executives, Louis and Niall. The secretary, Zayn and Drag. The marketing guy, Harry, and the choreographer is Liam. And I think it's funny that their acting is much more natural in character than when they're playing themselves. They shoot down all their ideas, so they start to just wreck shit in their meeting. And this is the video. They're hitting on Veronica, they're dancing with themselves, singing at the executives, they put their movie in the DVD player and then start destroying things. The characters are kind of getting into it though, they like the song, they run through the rest of the office and destroy everything before doing a very in-betweeners core dance break to finish off the video. And this song was huge, one of their biggest ever. There was a bit of a misunderstanding because of the title. People thought that they were declaring that this is the best song ever, but no, they're telling a story about dancing to the best song ever. A different song that goes, oh, 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 yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, can you guys listen? Another problem that arose was the intro for this song sounding like Baba O'Reilly from Sheehan. The rest of the song sounds nothing like it, but that intro is unmistakable. Baba O'Reilly has an iconic intro and song. This is a very, very bold move. And not a sample or interpolation, it just sounds a lot like it. And that's actually going to happen a couple more times moving forward, so prepare for that. And of course, at the time, any older person pointing out that this song's intro sounded like a ripoff of Baba O'Reilly would have caused an argument, which usually ended in one of us being like, who cares, One Direction's better. But this was mostly just random people getting upset with them. They weren't threatened with legal action. If this happened today, maybe with a younger artist, they'd be over with. Litigation is so hot right now. But Pete Townsend didn't care at all. He said he liked it and he was glad that they were inspired. So, and like I said, peak. So the movie's coming out, they put out another book, and you can bet that there's nothing special about it. It's just pictures and quotes, same old stuff that they always say, like always with the things that they sell. We also get a video that spreads like wildfire through Twitter, innocently titled, "What is this song?" The song in question was a leaked One Direction song produced by Mozella called Just Can't Let Her Go. The song has very mature lyrics. They're talking about I'm so whipped, she's got me by the throat, and this comes only months after the leak of another song, which some believe to be a Harry solo song, Don't Let Me Go. A rep for One Direction did try to quell rumors by saying it was not a Harry solo song, but rather a demo from a separate writing session that didn't end up getting used. But like I said, as One Direction fans, we have a habit of believing whatever we want to believe. But the real treat of this summer was the movie. The world premiere was held in Leicester Square on August 20th. Everyone brought their loved ones. There was a little photo booth moment. Zayn's girlfriend Perry is there with her X Factor winning lifeboat group Little Mix. And Zayn and Perry are engaged. This is like the X Factor royal wedding. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? She just shows up here at this premiere sporting this ring. Anyway, movie. This Is Us.
Oh, what you did that for?
The theatrically released One Direction documentary This Is Us, directed by the late director of Super Size Me, Morgan Spurlock. That's the documentary where he pretends McDonald's is ruining his liver while secretly he's an alcoholic with severe liver damage. He just kind of pretended like that wasn't happening. This movie has not great reviews. It is fan service. But just like the Justin Bieber movies before, it's PR. Every musician's self-made documentary is just meant to make you look good, even if they show them with some adversity. The message is always that the artist is right and good. So yes, of course it's fan service. The movie is half regular concert movie and half documentary. We see them rehearse. It's meant to show us that they're very down to earth and normal. They never wanted to be like other boy bands, which we know. They talk in depth about their X Factor journey. At several points in the movie, they stop to give all the credit of their success to the fans, which, if you needed a clue that this movie was for the fans, they leave for tour starting at Madison Square Garden. Surprisingly, no one's like scared or minding their six for Mr. X, which is like, weird, the storm is happening, hello. There's a couple cameos at MSG, Chris Rock, Martin Scorsese, Francesca Scorsese. Lots of emotional moments with their sweet moms, as well as Liam's dad and Harry's stepdad. Then they go to Japan. Lots of fans. They talk about how much they love each other and love being in a band. We get an a cappella. This is very rare for some reason. This is boy band bread and butter, but they never feed us ever for some reason. They're getting excited about surgical masks. They meet Hatsune Miku. We meet their touring team, their tour manager, Paul, who's like their surrogate dad on tour. He's in charge of keeping them alive and in line. But every One Direction fan already knew about Paul. And I don't mean to brag to you guys, but I did meet Paul. Yeah. At the concert, me and my friends saw him and took a picture with him, and everyone around us was confused because they didn't know about Paul's power. Their hairstylist, Lou, and I guess now that I'm mentioning her, I can bring this up. It just never came up naturally before. But Lou has a baby that became something of a celebrity for One Direction fans. And also she became YN's baby in fanfics because there was just so much content, especially of like Harry wearing her in a baby Bjorn. So, baby Lux. She's fully a teenager now, no longer a baby. We meet their stylist, security, the band, choreographers, the genius who choreographed them in a way that we all thought was just them walking around on stage. Like, I did not even realize there were patterns and directives, which was the goal, to look completely natural. A lot of artists could use him, let's just say that. Then they start the European leg of the tour. They go to Paris, Dusseldorf, Brussels, Madrid. They go perform at the X Factor again. Liam and Harry go fishing and they talk about the other members' personalities. Oh, and we learned that Louis and Liam hated each other on X Factor. They're basically like, Liam's the dad, he's responsible, Zayn's mysterious and artsy, Louis a handful, Harry was born to be a star, he's the boy band member out of them. Niall's the super fun one, and he and Harry are just always having a laugh. They finally get some days off and head home. Some of them stay with their parents. They miss them so much, and it still makes me tear up whenever they're on screen.
He's the only fella in the family. He's come.
Especially Louis' mom, who has since passed. She says that this is Louis' 5th day being home since he left for X Factor 2 years ago. And I was honestly shocked that that was only 2 years ago. They go back on tour, they're recording, getting no sleep. While that's going on, they announce a stadium tour next year that they are already selling tickets to. There's not even an album yet. They talk fame and weigh the pros and cons. They all pretty much say that sometimes they don't like it, but they wouldn't want to be doing anything else. Niall goes undercover as security. Then I was reminded that this was a 3D movie because they do some 3D animations during Kiss You. There were no other 3D elements in this movie besides probably like hands reaching out and stuff, but nothing this blatant. We're getting to the end. They all go camping together in Sweden. They chat about their future and the inevitability that one day they won't be in a boy band together. They talk about whether or not they'll always be friends. I would love to know if they just set this up and then went back to their hotel after, or if they actually camped. I really would love to know. At the very end, Zayn buys his mom a house. It's very sweet and emotional, but also sad because he couldn't physically be there. And they prepare to headline the biggest show on the tour in Mexico with a capacity of over 100,000 people. They sing What Makes You Beautiful and pants Harry during his solo, and that's the end of the movie.
That's what makes you beautiful.
This movie grossed $68.5 million in the box office on a budget of only $10 million. The DVD version included extra scenes, which I included in the retelling you just heard. So they have a new song and a movie out. If you don't think they were on a press junket, I don't know what to tell you. How have you not learned? They did the typical movie press, but the most important interview they did for this movie was with internet legend and famous One Direction fan, Tyler Oakley. This was everything. If you were a One Direction fan, you were more than likely online, and you more than likely knew and were a fan of Tyler Oakley. He was friends with all the other YouTubers who were friends with all the other YouTubers. This was huge for so many One Direction fans because our worlds were colliding, internet and One Direction. And not to mention he gave them flower crowns, so he did everything we needed him to do. Tyler, we salute you. They performed Best Song Ever at the Teen Choice Awards and at the Today Show and America's Got Talent. They went to the iconic 2013 Music Video Awards, the show that opened with Lady Gaga. Then they presented an award to Selena Gomez, who they've all publicly thirsted over, and then they won the award for Song of the Summer and got booed, like, a lot.
I want to say a massive thank you.
And then in the backstage cameras that the VMAs started doing, Gaga goes up to them and she's like, I am so embarrassed that just happened.
So I want to leave right now. Like, I don't even want to stay anymore. Because I don't want to be in a room where people will be like that. Because you know what?
Okay.
And on Andy Cohen's show, she talks about this more, and she sees it kind of as a diplomacy thing. Like, if she was in the UK and she won an award over a British artist, no one would have done that because it's impolite. Like, just talk about her behind her back like a normal person. There was also drama because Taylor was there. She and Harry had dated the year prior. And she says in her acceptance speech, like, thanks to the guy that inspired this song, and they cut to Harry. So I think a lot of people ran with the fact that the song was about him. But no, that's impossible. They didn't start dating until after that song was out. So that could have never been. They also, of course, saw the most talked about event of the night, Miley Cyrus's performance with Robin Thicke. Lucky them. On August 13th, the English Channel 4 released a documentary titled Crazy About One Direction, which shone a light on some of the more enthusiastic One Direction fans. And after watching it, I think I mainly have a problem with the framing of this documentary, because these people are real. And I know as a One Direction fan, we knew that these type of people existed. I just wish that if this is going to be made, they would have made it clearly a documentary about these girls. Because that's functionally what it is. It's not a documentary about One Direction fans. But because they framed it as such, a lot of One Direction fans were upset. Because it was embarrassing for representatives of our community to be out here being uncouth. Part of the outrage against this doc included claims that 42 fans had killed themselves in response. People online called Channel 4 murderers and said they should hide from us. I'm sure Channel 4 were quaking in their loafers. The documentary follows a handful of One Direction's most obsessive English fans. They chase their bus, try to find their hotel rooms, wait outside their families' homes. They've met their extended relatives, speak candidly with this TV crew about how they genuinely would love to be married to Harry Styles and live their life with him forever. They read Larry Smut out loud to the camera. If there was a social rule book for One Direction fans, they've broken every rule. Like, I watched it and I was entertained, but that's with the understanding that this was so fringe. I just wish that it was presented that way. And a lot of fan outrage came from this, mainly because of that, saying the girls in it were weird and obsessive and carroty and scary, sending threats and hate to One Direction's girlfriends, saying they wanted to hurt Taylor Swift. It made people ashamed of those members of the fandom. And I think with the way it was presented, having some normal people in there at least would have only made it better. If not just to show that there were good sides to this that make it make sense why you'd even want to be a part of it in the first place. Because as is, you'd watch it and be like, girl, what the hell? But this is what we were going through. Being a fan of the most famous boy band in the world does, in fact, have its drawbacks. Like being associated with these people. In September, we officially get an album release date and their first perfume drops. And a second is announced immediately after because, do I even need to tell you, it was a commercial success. According to Wikipedia, the perfume was the best-selling fragrance of Christmas 2013, selling higher than Lady Gaga's Fame, Nicki Minaj's Pink Friday, or Britney Spears' Fantasy. And y'all know Britney Spears can sell a perfume. It's the sweetest, most stereotypically girly-smelling perfume ever. I'd compare it to a juicy candy. And for some reason, at least I thought that, I didn't really like the smell of the perfume. I obviously had to have it because it was One Direction, so happy birthday to me. But it was a little sweet for me. My favorite perfume around this time was, CK1. But I did think that they must have personally formulated this to smell like their dream girl, so I still wore it a bit. And I think even though we're still on the Take Me Home tour, we're gonna start the next era now. This is prime fanfiction era, dark fanfiction era, after fanfiction era. This is all Black Harry era. This is where they all kind of start to hate their lives and look a little bit more sad about being in the band. And it's marked by specific things in my mind. Niall plays a lot more guitar. They all wear more jackets. Louis has facial hair. Harry's hair gets a little out of control and is always in this bandana. And his voice will sustain a lot of damage from loudly carrying the choruses for most of the singles in a way that's very much not healthy for his voice. You'll see. So this was it. It was time to see if One Direction could successfully mature. This was a really hard step for a lot of teeny bopper acts, but One Direction have never been very regular, so we're still on tour, the album rollout is happening, they're promising edgier sounds, the Sun once again gets exclusive rights to the album cover. It's still chill in the way that all of their album covers have been, but in a more edgy way. In the beginning of October, they do a quiz on Twitter. Well, One Direction HQ did a quiz on Twitter where they tweeted out hints with hashtags and had fans try and guess what the titles of each song were. They revealed all 14 of the song titles for the standard edition. And the second single for this album is on its way, Story of My Life. This song was revealed to be the second single as each member posted a childhood photo with the caption Story of My Life. So this was obviously going to be a sort of sentimental song. And if you've been paying attention, you'll have noticed that they always do a fun song, a slow song, then another fun song, and then if they do a fourth single, it's probably a slow song. The song's released on the 25th. It's a folk pop song written by Jamie Scott along with all 5 members of One Direction. The music video came a week later after lots of teasers on YouTube, once again directed by Ben Winston. The premise is that they're in a room full of thousands of images from their childhood, they're seen developing pictures, but the main part is they all get a scene where they recreate one of their childhood images. Zayn's posing with his little sister, Liam poses with his mom, dad, and sisters, Niall's with his brother Greg, Harry's with his mom, Louis poses with his grandparents, but when the picture switches to today, 2 of them have passed away. This is definitely their most personal and emotional video yet. They've never really done something like this one. So this is good news for their maturing image. And since, like I said, they're at their peak fame right now, it's around this time that they announce One D-Day. 2 days before the release of their sophomore album, Midnight Memories, they would host a 7-hour-long live stream. It would be recorded live from the YouTube space in LA. Several different companies gave fans opportunities to be there in either backstage audience or, if you were really lucky, to be in studio while they filmed. There were promises of Guinness World Record breaks, celebrity guests, and an exclusive chance to hear new songs from their forthcoming album. And it would all be on their own domain, onedday.com, via YouTube and Google+. And Google+ was an important piece of this with their new merger with YouTube. And lucky for you, I watched all 7 hours of it. So here it is. At the top of hour 1, we are immediately met with technical difficulties.
Throw it out then. No warning, right? What's going on? Will we get that again? Will we get that again?
As we said, things might go wrong.
That ain't right.
Oh, they've got the Guinness outfit.
Wow.
Where is it? Okay, there it is. And if you might have seen this throughout the day, and if you want to, hold on. If you had the app, you can scan the codes like this one throughout the show, unlock exclusive content to keep our share. Ooh. Apologies, it's going to be coming up later because we've got people that are making mistakes.
Something's gone wrong!
Their set here at the YouTube space is great though. They've got a multi-camera thing going on where the sets are built around it. So they have a music area, a spot with couches, a laptop and a screen, a big map, as well as a phone booth for listening to music, which we'll get to later. A lot of this first hour is introductory, getting us acquainted with how things are going to go for the rest of the stream, which is a mess. Helping them is BBC Radio 1 host Scott Mills, and a lot of this stream fills time with fan VTs, which are pre-taped segments. There's some that are music videos made by fans to songs, others are country-specific and have the fans showing their love for One Direction in one way or another. There's also Zapper integration in the stream, so that's super awesome if you like Linktree. There's a rapper named Thurs that's here, rapping out tweets sent in by fans. They work a lot of fan live tweets and following sprees into the stream. And I remember at the time being like, ugh, it's all locals, aka normal people, which is fine. I was just jealous and spent way too much time online. One Direction impersonators, Wrong Direction, have a segment and they're in studio wearing matching outfits. They do a Google Hangout with songwriter Jamie Scott, Stole My Heart is mentioned, and then we get to listen to Through the Dark for the first time. There's a part where Radio Disney comes in live and they have these 2 girls on stage and they tell them to name everything you love about One Direction in 7 seconds. Obviously, they're put on the spot and they're saying just about anything, and then they just send them away and bring out a different girl who won a contest thinking the prize was a CD, and she gets sent off in a limo to go watch One D-Day live. I would genuinely be so pissed off if I was one of those other girls. Why'd they do that to them? Sometimes the VTs we get are of One Direction, which is nice. At least they're on the screen. The first one is about them working out. Pure fan service. Then we get our first performance of the day, Story of My Life, which is rife with technical difficulties. And then an interview with Piers Morgan for some reason. Not sure what the vision was here, but they clearly don't like him or maybe just don't respect him. They're like laughing in his face and joking at him. Just yet another painful watch by 1D Day. Hour 2 is Liam and Harry's hour. And this is a fun hour, but lots and lots and lots of VTs, not enough Harry and Liam. We do get introduced to the magician Dynamo, and they do their first of many Google Hangouts with fans. Only problem is that production told the fans to have themes and make signs, but this isn't communicated to One Direction or really to us on the stream in any meaningful way. So they're like, why are you in Christmas sweaters? Why are you pirates? Etc. And there's some parts where the audio isn't getting through to them, and the crew badly telephones the questions to them. A specific example I can think of is later on in the show, someone asks if they're planning on pantsing each other or something. I don't know, it wasn't a great question, honestly, but the crew's like, what are your plans for today? So they start rattling off the segments they're gonna do later, things like that. But it's nice for these lucky few fans to get a moment to ask them a question. Some are very fun, some are trying to have their fanfic moment, and I can see right through it, but that is okay, because that probably would have been me too. Oh yeah, they're also doing Guinness World Record attempts. In the first hour, they tried to make a tall stack of toilet paper rolls. I made a prediction when I was watching it that they would not break any of these records because, like, they sound silly, most t-shirts being worn, toilet paper stack, but you just know the person who has that record spent forever practicing before actually calling the adjudicator out and doing it for them. That's just how this works. They don't break them on accident. And spoiler, I was right. They got fans in the phone booth, Harry gets in with them. When they got in there, they were crying, and Scott Mills read a tweet that was like, they've heard this already. And he's like, no they haven't. This is the first time anyone's ever heard it. But track 1 on the album is in fact best song ever. So they have heard it. At least 5 times just in this stream so far. They go backstage to the VIP cinema, which houses the winners of many a competition. This is where the technical difficulties started to get a little crazy. Just horrible mic feed in here. It's all a mess, but Harry and Liam are a fun duo, lots of charisma and desire to be and have fun here on this day. The best part of this hour is the fashion walk-off. Some fans won a contest in Sweden, and Harry and Liam wear the shirts that they made on the catwalk, with some advising from the legendary Cindy Crawford. The worst part of this hour is when they bring Dynamo back for an interactive magic trick involving fan tweets. He's doing a trick about an imaginary concert, and he wants the fans to tweet in a location of the concert, time of year, the song they're singing, and then Harry and Liam will pick from their tweets along with the name of the fan they're fake serenading, and the whole point is that in this little box, Dynamo has made a prediction. And if you've ever heard of a magician before, then you know that his guess will be exactly what they pick. Problem is, the hashtag thing that they're using isn't on the hashtags he's calling out. So they aren't getting answers, and no one knows how to fix it. It's a complete mess. Harry and Niall just start making things up, and then we just cut to the best bits of hour 2. So that's it. Hour 3 is Louis and new contender for fan service of the day, lilac-haired Niall. This hour answered my prayers for less VT, but reminded us of the old adage, careful what you wish for, because the technical difficulties have exponentially increased. You can also tell that Louis thinks this whole thing is stupid, so he's not really playing along, which is his prerogative, I suppose, but then it's also mine to point it out, so don't be mad at me because he has resting DGAF face. The highlight of this hour is the Talk Dirty VT. This is a One Direction made video to Talk Dirty by Jason Derulo. This is exactly the content the fans wanted from them. They could have just had one of these lined up for every VT slot, honestly, and it would have been great. The low light of this hour was maybe the low light of the entire stream. November 23rd for us was 1D Day, but it was also an important day for another media entity, Doctor Who. I know that doesn't carry as much weight for Americans, so to paint a picture for you of the pop cultural impact this has in the UK, imagine if Stranger Things was on for 50 years straight, and there were like 10 different 11s at this point because the show just kept going. Doctor Who is celebrating their 50th anniversary with a TV special, at the time the largest simulcast of a TV drama, a Guinness World Record that they did in fact break. Talk about salt in the wound. This was a huge event. It was shot in 3D and played in theaters and at home. Big major stuff. The Day of the Doctor. It had a super positive reception. Fans and critics loved the episode. But then after, they did a live after show on BBC 3. Doctor Who Live, the after party. They had everyone there from every era of the show, and they did a live call with One Direction. Not only had they not seen the episode, nor had anyone on their team, so their questions were just not suited for the event, but there was a 15-second delay.
Boys, firstly, how's it going, your live broadcast?
Where have
whatever you want. Boys, firstly, how's it going, your live broadcast?
Which caused a crazy feedback loop.
I actually think this is not working.
We do love you, we love Doctor Who. It's just not working.
This was so disastrous that it is pointed to as one of the main reasons for this after party being a failure, and it has a whole section on the fandom wiki for the episode. We get more VTs, more hangouts, we listen to Don't Forget Where You Belong, more phone booth, an opera singer comes in to sing tweets, yay. And then Dynamo Redemption arc, he comes in, they get the hashtags working, and what do you know, his prediction was right on the money. I don't know how he did this, but I'm angry, like a man from the Twilight Zone who won't take magic for an answer. Hour 4 is Liam and Zayn, another really fun duo, less live link-ups for this one, and more evenly spread out segments, so you don't get so bored with all the pre-tape stuff. And this hour honestly flew by for me. They start with a Shark Tank, Dragon's Den thing with the guy from Dragon's Den, where they choose a fan invention. Then they talk to Julian Bonetta about the story behind Better Than Words. He plays their original voice note from writing it. These segments where they're talking to someone that they talk to in real life are always the best, because it's so much more comfortable on both ends and not so robotic and professional. But we still get more phone booth, more VT, more songs, more opera singer, more hangouts, more follow spree. They play a game with Scott Mills called Feel the Entourage where they have to guess which member of their crew they're touching. And I started to get really into it when they were doing their Guinness World Record attempt. They actually got so close to getting it. If they would have practiced, they genuinely could have gotten this one, I think. But they don't. And their attempt pushes them a little over time, and they run the best bits before their hour is actually over. So we come back to Liam wrestling Olympic gold medalist and TNA star Kurt Angle. This is another segment I think was a great idea, and it was executed nearly flawlessly. The joke's that Kurt is going to try and school Liam about wrestling, no one believes in Liam, but then he ends up kicking his ass. Genius. Perfect use of having a wrestler here. My hopes were honestly not very high for this segment, and I was genuinely having a lot of fun watching this part. And it seems like Louie's really into this on the sidelines, which makes me sad. Why couldn't they put anything he could be excited about in his hours? It's just, I don't know. Hour 5 actually begins when Niall and Harry wheel in on segways. They front load with a lot of the stuff, 2 VTs, hangouts, phone booth, song, tweets. Then they do a segment called Harry Pottery, except the pottery wheel they have is Fisher-Price brand plastic crap, so fine idea, poor execution. But Niall and Harry are a fun duo, so it's fine.
Hey, we pretend like we're in goal.
James Corden calls in. This is another good one because, once again, someone they've talked to before, and he has all the girls laughing.
Cordo, have you heard of the new album?
Of course I haven't. I'm 35 years old.
The opera singer is replaced with a choir, so win. And then Dynamo comes back, but he swallowed his mic, I think.
What's up? There he is.
And that's the end of the hour. Hour 6, Zayn and Louis are back, and they were always a favorite duo of mine, so this pairing is perfect. VTs, hangouts, you know the stuff. Then Tyler Oakley shows up, and he plays a really fun game with them. He's also such a natural. I'm so jealous. Great segment. Love. They try another world record, and then they have to kill a bunch of time while Louis and Zayn prepare for the next segment, so there's not much happening for a minute. Then it's time for ninjutsu, led by a Japanese fan who won a contest, and Hiroshi Fujioka. And I fell down a rabbit hole looking at his Japanese Wikipedia page. This man has a truly fascinating life. They kind of present him in a way that I find a little misleading, but from what I gather, he was an actor on an iconic show which made him an icon in Japan, so much so that there's a minor planet named after him. Fascinating man. Anyway, they do a throwing star thing together. Zayn wins. I don't know if they're meant to be winners, but I mean, he got it on the board. VT, follow spree, some dancing to close out the hour, followed by an acoustic performance of Little Things from the floor. Now it's time for hour 7, the final hour, and because it's the final hour, they have a little more pep in their step. We start with a big game of VT rock, paper, scissors.
Everybody know the rules?
Yeah. Is it 3, 2, 1, go or 1, 2, go?
3, 2, 1,
You can do 3, 2, 1 or 1, 2, 3, depending on whichever one you like.
Then we get a VT from the US, and I feel like this is how the other VTs should have been. It's like a documentary about the fans. They're talking about how they got into One Direction and how they met their friends that are fans with specific footage of specific concerts. I feel like this would have been way cooler to see from other countries than a guy pulling them in a big bus. Then Simon shows up, and we all have our opinions about Simon, but this is another good segment. They're talking comfortably, they're joking around, it doesn't feel so stiff. They play Akinator with a dog.
Okay, do you like One Direction?
She's slightly nervous.
No,
There was a nod there. There was a nod there.
That was a nod. Like, you like One Direction.
And it doesn't work. And then they give Simon's pregnant girlfriend Lauren baby gifts. DVD promo, some cameos from some British people, and Louis Walsh. Then they play a food game with Asian fans. Fans from different countries ask them a trivia question about their country, and if they get it right, they get to eat yummy food, and if they get it wrong, they have to eat something weird. VT, phone booth, hashtags, we get to listen to you and I. And then to close out, we have a special guest, Jerry Springer. He hosts a big quiz where each of them are teamed up with 2 fans, and they have to try to guess what these are zoomed in pictures of. Super fun. Jerry Springer's another great guest because his show is very rowdy, so nothing really phases him. He's super quick.
Okay. Where's my stool? At my age, don't say stool.
Then they sing live with Michael Bublé, which I was very scared for, but it came out super nice. They get the whole crew involved. The choir is vocal mogging them. Then Jerry starts singing, which I thought was cute. Rest in peace. And that has been one D-Day. Back to the video. 2 days later, Midnight Memories was released. It actually leaked a week ago, but that would have ruined the role I was on. They promised rockier sounds, and that's exactly what they delivered. The genre breakdown compared to the last 2 records showed a huge increase in pop rock songs and the addition of some folk pop songs, which was very on trend for 2013. Stomp, clap, hey music was everywhere, and they're millennials. They could only resist their primal urges for so much longer. This is a very strong album of theirs. I think it's stronger than the last record for sure. The vibe of the first album was beach party by day, out at the club by night. The second album was Up All Night's older cousin, worse lyrically, leaning into songs that would sound good at a concert. And this album is 80s pop rock inspired, very tailor-made for playing in an arena. Most of these songs are produced / written by Julian Bonetta, John Ryan from the last record. Many more songs penned by Jamie Scott on this one. He's got 7 songs on this album. Most of the songs have a writing credit from at least one of the members of One Direction. Particularly Liam and Louis did a lot of writing on this album. We start off with our usual 1D power pop sound, then we kick into high gear for Midnight Memories. This song was controversial because the melody of the chorus is similar to Pour Some Sugar on Me. But the rest of the song bears no similarities. We get a few folky songs on this record, like I Said, Happily, Through the Dark, Something Great, and Half a Heart kinda. I'm not crazy about the particular sound, it was never really my vibe. But Half a Heart is the only one of these songs that I don't really like. And it's not even because of the sound. I've since day one hated the lyric, "You've been sleeping with my sputter." I don't know why, but that always made me cringe. And it's one of the only songs they didn't write, so. Then there's Does He Know, which kinda sounds like Jesse's Girl. Which I didn't really know that was a thing people said when the album came out. I'm sure it was. But when I was writing the script for this, I was listening to the instrumentals of every song. And that's just instantly what I sang when I was listening to the instrumental. I sang Jesse's Girl over it. I was like, wait, this is insane. It's like how they did their own version of One Way or Another. This sounds like their version of Jesse's Girl. These are my rankings for the whole album. Pause to enjoy. The Ultimate Edition is the only deluxe version of this album, so no book with pictures that come to life, unfortunately. This version has all the horny songs on it, besides Little Black Dress. Does He Know, Why Don't We Go There, Alive, that song. I don't know, I really like that song when I'm listening to it, but if I actually listen to the words, I'm like, girl, what? But that's the record. Harry is officially front and center, no more dancing around it. It's official. And with this album, of course, comes a press tour. 17 Magazine, interview, performance, interview, interview. They do the SNL and the X Factor finale, and then they get some time apart for Christmas. And while they're on a break, let's talk about Vine. During this press tour, One Direction were guest stars on Sesame Street, a children's public cable television show on PBS. And they posted a promotional video with Big Bird on Vine. This is where we came to laugh, where we came to post edits, and of course, where Harry Styles would post semi-regularly. I mean, he posted on Instagram and tweeted cryptically, but video content from them felt so personal. It was like you got to be there with him for 6 seconds. He documented some tour shenanigans that you didn't see in the movie, him being with 5 Seconds of Summer, which he kind of always was, now that I'm thinking about it. I remember that it was always a joke that Harry was going to leave One Direction and join 5 Seconds of Summer because he was always hanging out with them, and they posted Keeks the whole tour, so we basically got to be there with them. It got very parasocial, at least for me. And again, prime fanfiction era. Not so much the silly imagines and short one-off fics like before, but like Dark and After 2. That was starting to be released in May. After 3, I think, started in December. And go watch that if you want. I already went through the trouble of reading the story, not the books, the original Wattpad version with the original names, and watching the movies. So watch that, and maybe I'll finish the series. Okay, 2014 starts, and we're back into it. To kick off the year, they become the new faces of Toyota Vios in China. And there's an interview and some performances to go with it. But until the tour starts, they're all off living their separate lives with their separate little crews. In late January, a video is posted to YouTube called Liam's single announcement. and he announces that Midnight Memories will be the next single from the album. He also says that this song's really important to them because it's the first song he and Louis wrote for this record, and it set the tone for the rest of their writing. The next day, a teaser for the music video is posted, then another, and then the video. This video is very fun, once again directed by Ben Winston. It starts with them at a boring party before the DJ puts on a 12-inch record of Midnight Memories. They blow the party and go get kebabs, they turn the place up, they make a mess, eat the gyro right off the thing, and then they ride mobility scooters with old ladies. Then they steal a police boat and ride around the River Thames. Then, for the breakdown, for the part of the song that's clearly stomp, stomp, clap, they're doing clap, clap, hands out, which disturbs me deeply. Then they're on the outside of the barricades on the upper walkway of the Tower Bridge. They released the behind the scenes for this video in 4 parts, and they're all 1 minute long. I just cannot rock with this team. I just can't. And now we're about to start a world tour, and in case you've forgotten, it's a stadium tour. But first, their second Perfume comes out. That moment, as announced in this poorly lit video on YouTube that was filmed the night of the Brits. Speaking of the Brits, they won 2 awards this year. While there, they tell host James Corden that this is their first time seeing each other in 3 months. And before we leave for tour, real ads for the new Perfume, another short film. This one's actually 6 minutes long. I was excited to watch it, but it's inexplicably uploaded to YouTube in 360p, so it looks like shit. It's a video about them doing a photo shoot with a French photographer who's annoying. And for some reason, this video was just grating to watch. Like, I cannot explain it. The quality, the way the supposedly annoying character is the only one with any dialogue, making the video just really annoying. But the Perfume is released. I don't have this one. This is a variation scent of the original Arm Moment. Like, I'm sure you've seen other perfumes that do this, like the Marc Jacobs Daisy or like the Chanel Chance or Britney Spears Fantasy. The last single for this album is going to be You and I, another ballad. Video teasers are the same as last time, just 2 snippets 2 days before the video, and then the video. Once again, directed by Ben Winston. They're on this pier in Somerset, very rainy, moody, all wearing the same sweater, and they like morph into each other, and then they all come out and they're doing that stop motion kind of thing. Very cool, very cool. Now let's talk about the tour. This is a stadium tour. Every single thing was bigger, especially the production. I remember going to the show and being like, oh, this is very different. The arenas that they played on the last tour, for the most part, could fit inside of the stadiums that they're playing now. There's a 98-foot catwalk and allegedly the most video screen yet to be toured with an artist. They've got way crazier strobes and spotlights and fireworks and fire, just so much going on. The stage is massive. It's built to look like a skate park with a bunch of ramps and depth. They had to do so much work to make each part not slippery in the different weathers that they were going to be in. But now to the actual show. First of all, 5 Seconds of Summer were the openers once again for this tour. They had an insanely huge year the year before, initially propelled by that opening slot. They're having a 2011 One Direction moment right now, like all the tweens and teens know about them. So it's like you basically got to see 2 concerts. And then they're both doing meet and greets, like damn. After they get off stage, it's time. This tour feels more mature, not only in that they feel less styled, but also it feels less choreographed than the last tour. It's all still non-choreo, but it feels like they have less spots to hit. Niall's on the guitar from the jump, so much pyro happening. This tour isn't as story-based as the last one. The screens are more for projecting giant images of them in this gigantic stadium. And with that, the sections aren't broken up into chapters anymore. They're just playing it all the way through, no outfit changes. And because they have the long catwalk, they're constantly walking, some 2-stepping up and down to the B stage, so it's nice. It breaks it up so that just the front row aren't the only ones who see them, especially in a venue this large. I didn't notice it at the time somehow, but now that I'm watching, they definitely look less chipper than at the Take Me Home tour. And I mean, who wouldn't? They've had maybe 2 months of off time total since they started the band, and that may even be a generous estimate. But they put on a show nonetheless. Niall's playing his guitar, Liam's 2-stepping, Harry's spitting. Streamer, pyro, fog. The special effects team spared no expense, and the fans gave it back too. At the show in Milan, where the movie for this tour was taped, they did a bunch of different fan projects that, if I'm not mistaken, were recreations of other fan projects that had been done at different stops on the tour so that it could be in the movie. Because One Direction fans were so crazy organized and perfectly executed, like the people who organize and spend time printing and cutting and passing stuff out, you amaze me. They do a bathroom break sometimes, which was the only time they'd leave stage, as is shown in the movie, and they were not washing hands. They get the crowd to sing little things, they take a selfie, they introduce the band, answer fan questions. Like always, they go up on this big platform that's got screens wrapped around it. And then the show is over. Just kidding, they do an encore, You and I, Story of My Life, Little White Lies, and ending the show, of course, with Best Song Ever. But only 1 month into the tour, a video is released online by the Daily Mail of Zayn and Louis smoking. Now, I've seen people refer to this video as a leak, but like, Leaked from where? It's not like there was a hack and loads of stuff from their phones was leaked. It's just this one video that Daily Mail says has emerged today. The video shows them in Peru, that's only the second stop on the tour, smoking a joint in a van with their roadies with a police motorcade around them. In the article, the Daily Mail says, the video is likely to shock the parents of their many millions of young fans. It could also damage the plans of Simon Cowell to build on their huge American success and grow the band to superstar status, with the two members caught on film now facing the possibility of being barred from entering the US, where they're due to tour over the summer. And reading the Daily Mail is like eating glass. It's so painful. They overdescribe every single thing to stretch one sentence worth of story into 9 paragraphs full of ads. To me, if there's anything made clear by this video, it's that they must not smoke very often. It seems like an occasion. They're recording every hit. Let's just say, we've talked many times about celebrities who partake in substances on this channel, and none of them ever recorded themselves doing it like, ee look at me, because they were actually doing it. But don't worry about that. One Direction never actually properly addressed it. Their management told the Daily Mail, it's in the hands of our lawyers. And then immediately after, we get an announcement of another massive world tour. This tour would see them visit countries they had never seen before, like Indonesia, South Africa, many more. This tour would support the album that they were recording while on this tour, and we don't get that much in 2014. I guess 2013 was just so packed, it's like you can only get so much from 5 people. And around the time that this tour makes it to America, we get a third perfume. I actually had this one, but I couldn't find it, which made me sad, but it wouldn't have had the ring on it anyway, because for some reason I kept the ring in my car that I drove all through high school and college, which perished in a fire, so I do not have the ring. Around this time, because One Direction's music is maturing and their sound was changing, they were bringing in a new audience of people who maybe thought One Direction was kind of corny before. People that were like, oh, their new album's kind of alright. Like Story of My Life, You and I, those songs drew in a massive new audience of people who were previously turned off by the boy bandiness, or maybe even by their fans. But at the time, because I was 14, I was kind of annoyed, because like, y'all don't really know them like I do. If you can't handle them at their Stole My Heart, you don't deserve them at their Right Now. No. But this was proof that their plan worked. It became socially acceptable to like One Direction. I remember specifically at my school, people who thought One Direction was juvenile were now streaming with the rest of us. And they all liked Harry, which was a big problem for me because that was supposed to be my boyfriend, so it's actually funny that you'd even think that. Also, amidst the US leg of this tour, we start the rollout for the next record, which would be aptly titled Four. The rollout for this album, though, was different. Let's call it later. This was kind of their first record that they'd released that would be streamed rather than purchased. Within that 1 year from 2013 to 2014, Spotify was becoming more prevalent. People would still buy the album, of course, but streaming was coming in hotter than ever before this album's release. They began with a website change to what would be the album's cover, and I have a really complicated, complex, nuanced relationship with their album covers because on one hand, it shows their vibe, very jovial and blasé and fun, not supposed to appear like they're trying too hard. I have to take the stupid hat off, I can't take it. But like, isn't it just so low effort? Like, we never got anything remotely conceptual besides the Kiss You video and the Best Song Ever video. Why can't we ever have anything nice? I know they weren't supposed to be like other boy bands. That was their whole thing. I was there. We made fun of boy band stuff. But just think about what we missed out on. The earnestness of being in a boy band is kind of necessary when it comes to art direction. Like, there is no reason that the Where We Are tour merch should have looked like this. What is this picture? What's going on in this image? But we're also given a free download of a song called Fireproof. So these are the first taste of the album, setting the stage. It's a slower tempo, 80s soft rock meets modern pop hit. Way more chilled out than pretty much anything they'd ever released. And very vintage sounding, even more so than the most 80s sounding songs on the last album. But the first real single would come later that month, with Steal My Girl. This once again fulfills the prophecy of One Direction always having a lead single that's super fun and upbeat. It's distinctly less bubblegummy fun than any lead single they've ever had. Where the last album was transitional, this album is their first real foray into making adult music. Once again reminiscent of 80s rock, but just like our last single, there was many comparisons drawn to this song's opening piano riff, mainly Faithfully by Journey. But even Hayley Williams came out to say it sounded like It's Not Your Fault by Newfound Glory. The song was leaked a day early also. This is pretty much the standard now. Everything leaks. Then in October, the Where We Are tour movie is released. This is primarily a DVD release, though it did have showings in select theaters for one day. Later that month comes the music video to accompany our first single, Steal My Girl. The video features legendary actor Danny DeVito, who plays the music video's director. He's all artsy, he's spitting apple everywhere, and he assigns them each expressions. Harry is love, Niall is light, Liam is power, Louis is danger, and Zayn is mystery. They're all in shots with different things happening. Zayn's with 2 sumo wrestlers, Louis with a baby monkey, and other animals. Liam smashes inhibitions, Niall dances with Maasai people, Liam also leads a marching band, and Harry's with ballerinas. There's a rhythmic gymnast, a mime, every different form of expression, and also balloons. It was directed by Gabe and Ben Turner, co-founders of Fullwell 73, also owned by Ben Winston. The album is available for pre-order at this point, and if you pre-order it, there's a new song available for digital download every day. They also posted some acoustic performances showing off that more mature vibe they're going for. But unfortunately, and predictably, the album would leak in its entirety on November 7th, 10 days before it was set to release. They remotely accept an MTV EMA without Zayn. No explanation on that. On their YouTube, they do a 4 hangout where they have a chill, candid chat about the album with Ben Winston. It's one of the best One Direction interviews that exists. Being interviewed by someone that they're comfortable with helps, and it's not the same 7 questions they always get asked. They talk about bad outfits they wore during X Factor. They specifically reference a thing they did with Nokia where they wore these jewel-toned suits. But this turns into an overarching conversation about how they have a lot more input now and experience, which gives them confidence to make their own decisions, whether that be with wardrobe or with songs they put on the album or what have you. They tell some stories about the recording of the album, confirm that there is a One Direction vault with several songs from each album that didn't make the record. They talk leaks and how it's complimentary, but also kind of sad, but also fine because fans buy it anyway. We talk fanfic with an after reference.
You've never read the fan fiction. Louis?
No specific mention to Harry though, which I do wish we could hear his thoughts on the rise of Dark Harry. Brief mention from Liam about the Channel 4 documentary. He says he watched it with his family. But another thing this interview has that I do think reflects on what little time we have left is a sort of somber energy. They aren't teenage boys anymore, so they're obviously not going to be acting all rambunctious. But I can't help but miss that excitement they used to have. They're so overworked and drained, it almost makes you feel guilty consuming the things they're putting out. Days before the official release, the second single from the album, Night Changes, is delivered. It's a nice little folk pop song about the passage of time, but also about love, kind of like Story of My Life. On album release day, they're set to perform live from Universal Orlando on The Today Show, but they go on without Zayn. According to Liam, he had a stomach bug and they only found out that morning, so it was a super last minute thing. But he's back with them when they perform at the American Music Awards the next week. And the album is out now. Let's talk about it. We've got mainly the same producers on this album, but it takes the sound in a whole new direction. Most of the songs are either pop rock, where the rock is now this 70s, 80s stadium rock, or it's kind of a folk pop like we had on the last record. Overall, it's got a lot more of a vintage feel. Stockholm Syndrome is what a pop song is like on this album. It's synth pop, or like Illusion, which is so many things. There's another Ed Sheeran song on this one, 18. I think this one sounds very Sheerian as well. He's just got such a noticeable sound and like cadence that he writes with. The sound of this album is a lot more cohesive. More of that stadium sound, but you also have songs like Girl Almighty that have a kind of Bleachers-y, Hollister ad kind of feel. On the deluxe version, there were 4 extra songs. The first 2, Change Your Ticket and Illusion, I think both sound very 1975-esque. Change Your Ticket does sound like Girls in the beginning. Once in a Lifetime is a straight up soft rock song, and then there's the fan favorite song Act My Age. Here are my rankings for the album. I think with the maturing One Direction did, with wanting to focus more on the music, because like Harry McGee from Modest Management said in that GQ interview, sometimes for them the music wasn't the main focus. And I've demonstrated to you time and time again how personality driven so much of what they did was. But with moving away from that, and after so many albums that are so punchy and so bubblegum and so fun and going 1,000 miles per hour, this is probably exactly what they needed. Not just for their own sanity, but to grow a more mature fan base. Having an image that attracts mostly tweens is only cool to an artist for so long. Eventually they seek to evolve. Shortly after this album's release, we get the video for Night Changes. This is a perfect sign of the times for One Direction. We think back to their first videos only 3 years ago. They had love interests, groups of girls that they hung out with, but One Direction had the blessing of having their fans just a comment away on their phones, able to communicate not only to the band, but among themselves. And when you have a fan base that was a bit cannibalistic when it came to romances, see every girl who's dated a teen heartthrob ever, what can you do for your love songs? Well, this video is shot from the first-person perspective. The watcher of the video is the love interest. It's the YN experience. For so long we said, imagine dinner date with Zayn, and now we didn't have to imagine. We just needed to open our eyes and see. I get to go eat at a lavish restaurant with Zayn, to the carnival with Liam where he holds 2 caramel apples. One, of course, for me. I get to wear his scarf. I get to go ice skating with Harry, for a nice drive in a vintage convertible with Louis. I drink hot cocoa and maybe a sangria or something and have a game night with Niall. It's a perfect date. What could go wrong? But then, it turns out I have a crazy ex I must have forgot about. He shows up and roughs up Zayn before pouring water and spaghetti on him. And I leave him, soaked. Then Harry injures me, trying to spin me around and instead breaking my ankle. Then Liam gets sick in the waltzer and throws up in my hat. And Louis gets pulled over and taunts the policeman, getting arrested. And Niall catches on fire. So now I just had 5 terrible dates. And now that the album is actually out, the promo goes back into standard 1D mode. They're performing Steal My Girl and Night Changes on every stage that will have them. They do the NRJ Awards without Louis. They do BBC Awards, ARIA Awards, SNL again, their own TV special on Christmas Eve. They're on a big stage shaped like a 4 in Universal Studios Orlando. They sound great. They look kind of sad. The cutaways show them in South America on the Where We Are tour, doing press and rehearsing for their first show of the tour in Colombia. This whole thing was filmed when they came to Orlando before, when I told you about the performance on the Today Show, also at Universal. Remember when Zayn had the stomach bug and couldn't make it? This was a part of a larger collaboration with One Direction and NBC. In October, they posted a video on YouTube telling fans that they can join them at Universal to ride rides and see performances. Every country had different ways that they could win. Some radio stations picked the winners. There were hundreds of winners from all over. I spoke to some of the winners myself so that I could get more information about this trip that I wish I'd been on. This is a 4-day trip beginning on the 16th. Winners who were staying in the Cabana Bay Beach Hotel got to listen to the album a day early at a pool party held for the winners. The next day is the 17th, album release day. Starting at 4 a.m., they get to go to the sound check for their Today Show and Nuevo Dia performances, both NBC shows, as I'm sure you can guess. Then they get to stay for the taping of the shows. Then they get to just go run around the park. On the ride Rip Ride Rocket, where you could pick the music, there's a thing where you can get secret songs, and Universal posted the codes to 10 One Direction songs you could listen to on the ride. I unfortunately couldn't find any videos of it. This was a ride you probably wouldn't want to have your camera out on as a layperson. They do make these DVDs that edit together 7 seconds of you on the ride with a bunch of pointless 3D animation of the roller coaster. But you can't do those when you use a secret song, so we'll just have to imagine.
Don't let these little things slip.
Most of the other cutaways for the special were filmed on this day, so Zayn is missing from parts, like this part where Liam interviews them on a roller coaster. They cut away to him asking Zayn and him saying no, but I'm pretty sure he just wasn't there when they filmed it. They're riding the now defunct Dueling Dragons ride at Universal, which had been renamed Dragon Challenge for Harry Potter reasons, but it's gone now. This is a fun idea though. Having them interview one another always works. Niall wins, by the way. His hair also does not move. Lou Teasdale, you will answer for your crimes. A lot of this works as promotion for the very newly opened Wizarding World of Harry Potter. They do a segment filmed on that first park day where they surprise fans by just appearing as employees on a ride. The ride being Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. Niall surprises fans at the Harry Potter candy store. Then they're told to go to this theater to see a special screening of their new movie, Where We Are. But Harry and Liam show up and surprise them. Not shown in the special, fans also got to go to this light show with fireworks and One Direction music. And you could sign up for wake-up calls to your hotel room from the band. The 18th was another day they had to play in the park. That night is when this is filmed. Zayn was finally there. He talks a little in the special. They do more cutaways to South America. They see Christ the Redeemer. Then another part shows them recording in hotels on tour again, raw vocal clips. We see the genesis of Midnight Memories, which started as I Love KFC. Then they close with a performance of Best Song Ever. And thank you again to the winners of this contest who shared their experience with me. You were very helpful, and I'm also very, very jealous of you. To kick off 2015, they perform on Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve. Kinda. It's pre-taped and in Hollywood, so not live in New York like Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve. They get interviewed by Fergie and get asked about their craziest fan encounter. I wonder what they'll say. Now, we wait. The album's out, and we are to patiently wait for the world tour. Bigger, better, faster, jumps higher, this tour has it all. Kicking off in Sydney with a sold-out show, this tour is very similar to the last one. The stage design is a lot less intricate, still lots of screens, no formal breaks or themed sections, just playing all the way through. Niall's on guitar for a few songs. It even has some of the same semi-scripted song lead-ins, like Zayn introducing little things. Here we go, guys. 1 month into the tour, on March 18th, photos are released of Zayn holding hands with a mystery woman in Thailand. You'll remember that Zayn was one of the members who not only had a partner, but was engaged to said partner, who is currently in England, so it couldn't have been her. He responded on his Twitter saying, "I'm 22 years old. I love a girl named Perry Edwards. And there's a lot of jealous in this world, and I'm sorry for what it looks like, X." These pictures hit the Daily Mail like a bus. And at the next show in Hong Kong, no one in the crowd knew that it would be One Direction's last performance with all 5 members. The next day, Zayn flew back to England, citing stress. On Twitter, the official post read, "Zayn has been signed off with stress and is flying back to the UK to recuperate. The band wish him well and will continue with their performances in Manila and Jakarta." Which sort of insinuates that he would be back for their shows in Africa and beyond. But just as One Direction took the stage in Jakarta, their team posted on Facebook confirming that Zayn would no longer be a part of the band. We're in mourning. I remember walking into the cafeteria after school was out, and there were just girls sobbing. I'm not exaggerating. The band themselves were doing all right. There were photos of Harry allegedly crying on stage, but they were making jokes about it from day one. But this does put a damper on, everything. The people on every stop for the rest of the tour bought tickets thinking that they were seeing all of One Direction. And think of how many girls out there's favorite was Zayn. Not to mention, the rest of this rollout is pretty much trashed now. It doesn't have to be, but it would be weird to just have a third single where they make a music video and they just carve around his verse, and they'd have to redistribute his lines for all the TV performances. So the Four era is kind of over now. They're still touring, but there won't be another single or video. Just the 2 we have. Less than 24 hours after the Facebook statement, photos start to hit the tabloids of Zayn in the studio. He's there with producer Naughty Boy, who is in part responsible for the year of Sam Smith we've been in. He's also someone Zayn knew and collaborated with even prior to leaving the band. This perturbed a lot of fans. We really believed him when he said that he wanted to be a normal 22-year-old. I mean, we also believed him when he said that he was just taking a break for stress and would be back for the rest of the tour, so maybe we don't have the best track record, but still. Fans replaced the sadness they felt for losing a member and turned it into anger at Zayn for betraying them. Thus begins the Naughty Boy Saga. I had to do a complete Twitter hunt down to find these tweets. This was completely misreported by the tabloids and thus misremembered by everyone. But I tracked down all of the tweets. The typical article will tell you that photos leaked of Naughty Boy and Zayn, so Louis tweeted this. Or that Naughty Boy posted his collab song with Zayn, and Louis tweeted this in response. But you see, that makes no sense. Why would Louis just post this out of the blue because they're working together? Doesn't that seem a little oversensitive? But you see, this was not the sequence of tweets. During the US leg of the Where We Are tour, Naughty Boy wrote a song with Zayn and Emily Sandé for One Direction called One Chance to Dance. They recorded it, sent it off to be mixed and mastered, and Naughty Boy did an interview with The Mirror at V-Fest where he said that it was very likely that this would be the lead single for One Direction's forthcoming album, Four. But when the album's track listing was made public, the song was nowhere to be found. This was one of Zayn's key frustrations the entire time in the band. You didn't need to be a psychic to see this. He constantly said he was never into boy bands, he never really listened to music like what they make prior to being in a band with these people singing these songs. And we all agreed that this was part of the magic. They were IRL Big Time Rush, and you can't have that formula without this very discomfort. So when Zayn leaves the band, doesn't even finish the album cycle, immediately goes and works with this person who made the snubbed record, hello, Some people even had the notion that Naughty Boy stole Zayn, that he somehow coerced him and forced his hand towards a breakup. So I don't think that just because he's around Zayn that fans liked him. A lot of fans followed him strictly for extra Zayn content. And he would tweet things that read as One Direction shade. I guess only he and God know if it was, but regardless, people read it that way. Which, from the perspective of that story, as a producer, you would probably not like the One Direction machine. So fans who loved One Direction hated him more and more. He would sometimes respond to the hate in various sassy ways, which made fans even angrier. He was like a recurring Twitter villain to a certain sect of fans. Because not everyone who was a character in the One Direction story engaged with us online. In fact, a lot of them didn't. But he did. Negatively. I'm not saying this is a good thing, this is just how it goes on the internet. You engage with a fandom of people negatively, 2 + 2 equals a lot of people are now mad at you. So an account tweets a video, a ditty. If you don't remember, this was an app Vine era where you could type whatever you wanted in and then it would make a song out of it. There were like 3 free melodies, so everyone's sounded similar. They've gone viral many times. So this video gets posted. It's a ditty saying, "Naughty Boy saved my life, Zoddy will rise." Zoddy being a portmanteau of their names Naughty Boy had posted about before when working with Zayn. He retweets this video, which makes a lot of people very upset. It was already the opinion of a lot of fans that he was using Zayn for attention, blabbing about the song, beefing with fans, etc. And the narrative around Zayn's split was that he left to not make music anymore. So then to see Naughty Boy, who he was clearly making music with, get a little thrill out of teasing One Direction fans about making music with him, it was working a nerve. And it made its way to the top of the food chain. Louis tweets, "New thread, not as a reply to anything." Wow, at Naughty Boy Music. You're so inconsiderate, pal. Seriously, how old are you? Grow up. Hashtag master of all wisdom. Naughty Boy then replies, "Calm down, was talking about Louis Walsh because he didn't let someone through on X Factor. Look at the date of the tweet. Hashtag 2014. Because he thinks Louis is upset about this tweet. Louis replies and clarifies, "I was talking about the video you tweeted, clearly trying to wind the fans up. Well, you succeeded anyway. Fair play." This confused me at first because I thought, does Louis and everyone else think that he was the original poster of the video? Because the person who posted it was a Zayn fan account with the username NaughtyBoyMUS. And with the way quote tweets used to look, it's very plausible that Louis could have seen this and thought it was originally posted and therefore made by Naughty Boy. Because the video wasn't specifically mean or anything. I can see why Naughty Boy would be confused that this is what Louis responded to, but I guess it was just the culmination of it all into that retweet. So then he tweets, "When you're getting hate for something you didn't do, a little bit of love can go a long way. That's why I retweeted. Time will tell the real story, guys." He said in an interview that he was just retweeting a bit of support because fans kept sending him mean ditties, which I'm compelled to believe. It doesn't matter at this point, ditties are dropping left and right. Naughty Boy has become the face of the anger fans have about Zayn leaving the band. And it didn't help that they already hated him. He tweets, "Let the music do the talking, guys. Thank us later," with a SoundCloud link to a track called I Won't Mind Zayn Naughty Demo. It's a very raw track of Zayn singing over a plucky, folky guitar. It honestly sounds like something One Direction would release. That was the most shocking part to me. The clip was deleted shortly after, and he tweeted that no one is against anyone here, seemingly saying that it's done. A couple days later, all this is finally hitting the tabloids, hence all those articles that wrote the sequence of events incorrectly. The Mirror says that Zayn's solo song with Naughty Boy is a One Direction reject, to which Louis replies, "Is that an April Fool?" But where was Zayn in all of this? Let's just say the cheating allegations opened a can of worms. Photographers snapped Zayn leaving Thailand, getting to Heathrow from Thailand at 5 a.m., Perry leaving their house with a big duffel. Then they reportedly went on holiday together. He had no time to be worrying about the ditties Naughty Boy was retweeting. And keeping with the silly laughs they'd been having about it, Liam posts a video to Instagram of a man doing karaoke with the caption, "New fifth member? I think so," which prompted Naughty Boy to post this image with Zayn, captioned, "Replace this." Louis then tweets, "Remember when you were 12 and you used to think those Mac filters for your picture were cool? Haha, some people still do. Ha!" Naughty Boy replies, "And some people can't even sing. But who's complaining when there's auto-tune, eh?" Louis, "Jesus, forgot you were such an in-demand producer. How does it feel to be riding on the back of someone else's career?" "Yeah, how does it feel, mate? You've been doing that for the last 5 years. I've got Emily Sandé and Sam Smith on my CV. Good for you. Well done. I think we've done all right in terms of sales, and I've happened to write on most. Keep trying." Zayn finally chimes in, saying, "Remember when you had a life and stopped making bitchy comments about mine? Now it wasn't funny. It was sad. There were a lot of different friendship pairings in One Direction, but there were some that stood out as more apparent, and one of those was Zayn and Louis. Hell, you saw them sharing that little joint together. They had experiences. Okay, let's step back from that for a second, because that is no longer One Direction. Louis and Liam mainly were very vocal that they were going to continue without Zayn, and they were actually already hard at work on their next album. The tour continued without a hitch. They removed Zayn from all the promotional material and the on-screen graphics. They even had Niall record his parts of the safety instructional before the concert. In June, they headlined the Capital FM Summertime Ball. Their first song as a four-piece was released as a surprise drop. Liam tweeted an iTunes link to a song titled Drag Me Down. The song is reminiscent of sounds we heard on Four, that anthemic stadium rock type sound mixed with modern electronic drums. And it was successful. Zayn's absence didn't seem to hinder its performance. It broke the record on Spotify for most streamed track in one day. Zayn even tweeted his support for the song. He's still got a lot going on, engagements off with Perry, but he did sign a solo recording deal with RCA. Oh, and it seems like he and Naughty Boy are on the outs now, so a lot has changed since the beginning of the year. The band's first televised performance of Drag Me Down was at the Good Morning America Summer Concert Series, where they also teased a little bit about their new album, which they confirmed they were working on, but still no official name or release date or anything. Oh yeah, and we get confirmation that Louis is having a baby. Well, he's fathering a baby. This hit the tabloids a few weeks prior, and this is our first official confirmation that he's going to be a father. The music video for Drag Me Down was released shortly after. Very simple. They're at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. They're astronauts heading into space, directed by Gabe and Ben Turner, who did Steal My Girl. Fun times. Everything seemed to be going great, all things considered. Which is why it came as such a shock when they announced that starting next year, they'd be going on an extended hiatus. Meaning once this album comes out, that's it. As if we hadn't been through enough with Zayn leaving, here they were, ripping our hearts right out of our chest. And good luck if you never got to see them live. They're actually still on the On the Road Again tour, so you could go to that still, but... So let's wind down, shall we? In September, they revealed the title of the album, Made in the AM, alongside a promotional single, Infinity. Just like Drag Me Down, classic One Direction pop rock song written and produced by our favorites, Julian Bonetta, Jamie Scott, John Ryan, gang's all here. The On the Road Again tour finally comes to a close, and then the second single for the next, and also last album, is Perfect. It's less slow than our typical second single, but still following our same pattern. The music video was released a few days later. Very simple, black and white footage of them in a hotel in New York. Kind of slice of life vibe, very intimate, personal, laid back. Directed by Sophie Muller, who is one of the leading women in the industry. She's got a really great portfolio of work that includes No Doubt, Sade, Gwen Stefani solo, Hole. I could go on, but also assisted by Giovanni Ribisi, actor and apparently Scientologist. I learned a lot making these videos. In November, the album's finally released. Made in the AM. It's their most mature album to date. There's still hints of that indie folk rock vibe. Some like AJR type songs with Never Enough and End of the Day. But a lot of it takes this kind of 90s soft rock vibe. You also have some jazzier tracks with Olivia and AM. My personal favorites from this album are What a Feeling. I think that's like the universal favorite from this album. It's an incredible song. If you told me that it was a cover of an older song, I would have believed you. Hey Angel and Perfect. I actually didn't think that was gonna be one of my favorites until I heard it in the context of the whole album. Like, I was imagining being at the reunion and dancing to that, you know? These are my final rankings. They performed on Kimmel, on Alan Carr, and then finally back on the X Factor for their final live performance. They had a pre-tape performance for New Year's Rockin' Eve again, but that just ruins the gravity of the X Factor thing, doesn't it? In late January, the tearjerker video for their final single, History, is released, full of throwback clips reminding us of better times. And then at the end, they all run their separate ways. There was actually an extended cut where they all run back together again, ruining the gravity again. Then, that was it. So we're back to today. One Direction is over. They constantly reiterated that they were on a break and it was not in fact over, but that isn't true. I don't know if they knew it wasn't true when they said it, but at this point, I don't know if we can continue to call it a hiatus. When I think of a group going on hiatus with every intention of getting back together, I think of Destiny's Child in 2001. They'd put out 4 albums in 4 years, and they took a hiatus to develop themselves as solo artists so that when they came back for their next Destiny's Child project, they'd be more well-rounded as artists. Michelle released gospel music, Kelly did R&B, famously Dilemma with Nelly, and Beyonce did pop as well as starring in movies. They all kept in close contact the entire time, and 3 years later they came back with their 3-time platinum album Destiny Fulfilled, using their newfound growth to bring us songs like Lose My Breath, Girl, Soldier, Cater to You. I could go on. But that is a hiatus. One Direction broke up with a PR twist. And I get why they did that, for sure. In interviews since the hiatus, they all seem to say that they don't really talk to one another as a group. Liam and Louis talk, Harry and Niall talk, I believe, but there's no, like, WhatsApp group message. They seemingly aren't ready to reunite. They mostly are like, well, if they'd be down to do it and it worked out with all of our schedules, which sounds like what you'd say when you've never talked about it. And I don't think Zayn is on the best terms with any of them. There was a story Louis told where they'd all agreed apparently to go to Louis' X Factor performance after his mom passed away, but then Zayn, like, ghosted. And he said that he still can't forgive him for that. And Zayn's only very recently started to change his tune about the group in general and say that he'd want to reunite with them. But Louis' a dad, Liam's a dad, Zayn's a dad. They all have solo careers. Their 10th anniversary made a little noise. I don't know. I just don't think that they're into the idea of that right now. There's been some controversies. Liam's debut song, Strip That Down, had a line that said, I used to be in 1D, now I'm free. And people were upset about that. Drama and then also, like, serious literal crimes. I personally wouldn't want to get involved in any of that at all. And I wish healing to everyone involved. I love One Direction's music, but they aren't One Direction anymore. They're grown-ass men. And I, for one, will not ever put my trust in some random man that I don't know. This has been a video about One Direction as the entity that we all loved. I do not know these men. None of us do. Unless, of course, Mr. X is watching. Of course, there are a plethora of things I didn't mention. Some I just couldn't get to fit in the timeline right. And others, I just didn't feel like it. Here's a tribute to some of the lost topics. Their fourth perfume. Their dolls, which I didn't mention, but they were featured prominently in the background this entire time. Their store, 1D World. Their cardboard cutouts, sold at their store, 1D World. The rumor that Louis' son would be named Concho Bar, Red Connor. Rainbow Bondage Bear, and the other one, whose name I can't remember right now. There's a creator on TikTok, 1D Historian, who probably has a video on every one of those things. It just wasn't in my cards to talk about everything. I'm sure you know, there's just too much. This has been fun and also grueling, much like being in One Direction. It was really interesting making this and getting to know so much more about boy bands past, and a part of me kind of felt like we were fed scraps without no dancing, no serving, not intentionally at least. But also no, it's what we wanted. In a world that was burnt out on boy bands, it only makes sense that the boy band we would choose would be one that didn't want to be like a boy band. And it felt so random, but looking back, it's like some kind of cosmic destiny that we were gonna have a boy band like them. But the pendulum will swing, and at some point, Western music moguls will get excited about boy bands again, and we will have a million boy bands just popping up out of nowhere. I'm calling it now. Simon Cowell tried to make a show about making a boy band. I don't know if that's still happening, but I remember while I was working on this video, I saw a headline about how, like, no one showed up to the audition. There's also that show Popstar Academy on Netflix, which is so making the band core. It'll happen again. We just have to wait to see how. I hope you enjoyed this video, taking this journey with me. This is one of several very large videos I've been working on. I did not mean to go missing for a year. There's just a lot going on. It'll make sense. It will. I keep saying that, but it will. Just trust me. Thank you so much for watching. As always, love you like a bro and sis, and I'll see you next time. Bye.